to the right place.
Welcome to the big show.
Whereas on the men's side, I think they overloaded two of the brackets, and as a result, I think we're not going to get a good Final Four in the sense of who everyone really would like to see there.
The system is a mess, guys, but I think that's neither here nor there. And
the next 3 hours, we'll cover it all.
We don't have the time to move pieces because conferences are playing their title games on Sunday afternoon at 4 o'clock, for God's sake.
I'll tell you what, I'll support them. You guys are going to get to the Sweet 16 and get annihilated by Stevens Point.
With regional reports.
We've talked a lot about the fact on the men's side that there's not a lot of dominant teams, and the flip side of that is that you have a lot of parity. It makes the conference races exciting.
And interviews with coaches.
Hey, it's great to be on Hoopsville. I tell you, it's that time of the year.
Yeah, it is.
Thanks for having me. Thank you very much for having me.
This D3 basketball is the greatest. The players, they play because they love it. They're fun. The teams are playing. You go to these other campuses. It's where it's at.
And we knew that the ODAC competition was going to be very tough. We knew that each coach had done their job with recruiting. And there were so many young teams that we just knew that each and every night when we played an ODAC contest that we had our work cut out for us.
We'll talk about who's on top.
And the CCRW is much like the Wisconsin League, the WIAC, in that, I mean, really, it's a cliche, but it's true. On any night, anyone can beat you.
Those surprises.
Every game counts, especially
Play
the
your
regional
season.
games. Yeah.
Don't lose to a bad team.
Well, and don't lose your conference tournament.
And who's making news in Division III.
We got an awful tough league, and we have some tough games this week, but we're still tied for first place in our league in the loss column.
And as you point out, they're not a reliable team in the NCAA tournament. They've proven it year in and year out that you can't count.
You can even join in and chat with us.
I mean, this lower right-hand bracket is loaded.
This bracket is ridiculous. I mean, you could take a final. This could be a Final Four bracket.
You want to play that Thursday game because you have not won an NCAA tournament game. You got to go out there and show yourselves that you can actually do it.
So sit back and relax, and let's talk D3 hoops.
We talked before about Hope Calvin being far and away the #1 rivalry in Division III basketball. You can't dispute it.
I think the WIAC always deserves 2 teams in the poll for sure, and probably 3.
Well, one, I think they got the easiest run to a possible Final Four. They don't have a lot of challenges on the way.
There were 3 teams in that region that deserved first-round buys.
Exactly.
And only 2 could get them.
Now it's time for Hoopsville.
Great show. Keep this up. This is a good thing for D3, and I will enjoy listening to the rest of the show.
Let's get it started in here. Everybody, let's get into it. Get stoked, get it started, get it started, get it started. Let's get it started.
Here's your host, Dave McHugh.
And welcome, everybody. I'm your host, Dave McHugh. Chris Taher is our producer extraordinaire, working hard. He'll be on the phone lines all evening as we get you. I don't know what we're getting you tonight. I guess prepared for the NCAA tournament, but really getting you getting you up to speed on what was decided by the men's and women's committee chairs. The brackets are out. If you have missed the news, if you missed it, you're not here for a different reason. You might be here for a different reason, but we got lots to cover. Here's what we have confirmed. The men's committee chair, Ken Schumann, will be on the show in a matter of minutes. We will talk to him about the men's bracket. We'll also talk to him about the selections. I think D3 Hoops was, I like this, 60 out of 62. Granted, 40 of them were automatics. Either way, 22 out of... or 20 out of the rest of the 22, not too bad. We'll talk to him about who got in. I think there were some surprises, namely NYU and maybe St. Joseph's of Long Island. And we'll talk about those surprises. We'll talk about some of the placements. For example, Virginia Wesleyan getting a bye, as did Amherst. So I don't think Amherst was a huge surprise. I think we prepared you for about 10 days now that was a possibility on the men's side of things, that we could see it happening. So we'll talk about those things. We'll talk about moves like Whitworth moving or flying to Texas. By the way, Whitworth's men's basketball coach will join us later in the show to talk about Whitworth and how they're doing. Remember, new coach there, but with a pretty good squad nonetheless. We will also, on the men's side of things, yes, we will talk to St. Joseph's of Long Island. surprising inclusion, at least in our minds, of into the tournament. Granted, they have a good resume. We will talk to them about getting into the NCAA tournament. St. Joseph's of Long Island will take on Albertus Magnus. Welcome to the tournament, though that will be maybe a fascinating athletic game. That game at Middlebury. We'll talk about those decisions as well. For example, MIT not hosting conceivably in the regional rankings, though we have not seen them yet, or I didn't see them as of an hour or so ago. Decided, I guess, that MIT did not jump over Middlebury in the final regional rankings. I don't think that's a bad thing for MIT, to be completely honest. I do not think that's a bad thing for MIT. I think this is a way of MIT being able to prove themselves. Do they deserve to host? Maybe. But now make it your mantra to go prove yourself. So we'll talk about. There's plenty to talk about on the men's side. So that's who we're going to talk to on the men's side. On the women's side, we are working to have Robin Hamilton, the selection committee chair, join us. She is willing to join us. Please don't, no misunderstanding. She is willing to join us and is hoping to. She is en route back to the northwest of the U.S. as we speak. We hope to be able to get her once she has landed in Seattle. Get her on the line, get her take on a women's bracket that certainly has some interesting scenarios, also has some interesting picks. We weren't nearly as good at D3 hoops as we were on the men as we were on the women, but we'll talk to her about that. We'll also talk about, let's see, sorry, there's about 4 things going on in my head. We'll also talk to Rochester's women's basketball coach, Jim Schreibel. Rochester went from number 1 in the regional rankings to out of the NCAA tournament in 1 week with 1 loss. We'll talk to Coach about that, obviously his reactions to that. But he's also a former East Committee chair. I believe he served as recently as last year. I could be off on that. So he may have an idea at least on what may have happened, and we'll get his take. We don't usually end up talking to teams just out, but this time we will, and he's been gracious enough to join us. We will get him on the show. We'll also talk to Nancy Fay from Wash U, the soon-to-be Hall of Famer, I guess. She's not officially inducted, I don't think. We will talk to her about the fact that her team will travel out to Center to play in the first couple rounds. Lots to talk about, lots to cover. There's about 100 things in between to deal with. Lots to cover in between now and then. You know what? Disregard Nancy Fay. Just got a text message. She's having a coaches meeting, will not be able to join us. So we'll have to we'll forego that and see if we can find somebody else on the women's side of things, or maybe on the men's side. We will cover those down the road. Again, coming up, Ken Schumann of the men's national committee. He's out of Pacific. We'll hopefully get some questions answered from there. Lots of questions. By the way, you can text them to us or tweet them to us at D3Hoopsville, at D3Hoopsville, hashtag Hoopsville as well. Like, for example, I got one here. It says, love being bubble team that barely makes it in. People complain about you and people hear about you. Who are you? I can't tell from the information there. Who are you? So let us know. We would love to hear what's going on. So be at least a little detailed for us. Let us know who you're talking about. Again, Ken Schumann coming up here momentarily. You can also email us at hoopsville at d3hoops.com. That's hoopsville at d3hoops.com. You can IM us at hoopsville2000. Got a couple questions. Let's see if we can answer them from our esteemed colleague, Dean Corwin. 2 questions for you or the committee chair. Well, I'll see if I can tackle them now, Dean. Shocked by Kings women hosting after losing conference finals. And did the issue of Kane being investigated have any bearing on their position on the bracket? Dean, I will say off the top of my head, there's a chance that King's position geographically may have come into play here. There's also a chance that they were still regionally ranked higher than a lot of the other teams. Remember, Juniata was there, Lebanon Valley. But I have a feeling there's a good chance that maybe Kings, and I'm double checking that too. I want to confirm that. I'm quickly looking. on my little bracket here on the women's side. Sorry for the pregnant pause, everybody. Can't even read my own handwriting. Yeah, they are hosting. So there could have been a geographical reason there. There's lots of reasons, but we'll ask Robin. As far as the Kane thing, I don't think that plays any impact, to be honest. We'll ask Robin. I think she'll say the same thing. I don't think they have any impact. I know the Kane story is certainly interesting, but thank you, Pat, for reminding me. Another reason Kings is probably hosting. Remember, everybody, William Patterson women cannot host. If you notice at the Kings bracket, thanks, Pat. I completely missed that. William Patterson, Salve Regina, Kings, and Oneonta State. That is William Patterson's pod, but they cannot host on the women's side early. And that's because the men are hosting on the even years in the first round, and the men are hosting on the men's side this year. So that is why Kings is hosting, Dean, if you're listening in. And so that's the reason. Again, the Kane thing, I will say now, I guarantee you the answer is going to be it has no bearing, but we'll certainly ask Robin about that if when we get her on the line, I should say. We're going to take a very quick break, get Ken Schumann on the line. Again, if you have questions for the Men's National Committee Chair, this is the time to call us. He will join us on the line. Pat Coleman will join us as well. We will do our best to answer your questions and get our questions answered as well. Pat, you don't have to join us. Pat's listening in. It's up to you, my man. You let us know. But we will get Ken on the line. Again, you know how to get a hold of us. Email hoopsville@d3hoops.com. I am is Hoopsville2000 on your AOL IM. Facebook.com/Hoopsville, though I'll be honest, of all the windows I have opened, that one I don't tend to go to for questions just because there's so much going on. But I will try and do my best. Twitter @D3Hoopsville or hashtag Hoopsville. @D3Hoopsville or hashtag Hoopsville. Those are very good options. And again, email hoopsville@d3hoops.com. We're going to take a quick break, get Ken Schumann on the line, and we'll be back with more Hoopsville. You're listening to a special selection matchup Monday show of Hoopsville right here. We'll be back right after this.
Are you an embarrassment on the dance floor? Do you confuse state capitals and read too many celebrity gossip magazines? Well, if you answered yes, you may have what it takes to adopt a teen from foster care, because teens don't need perfection, they need you. So if you think an MP3 is a computer virus, it's okay. There are thousands of teens in foster care who would love to put up with you. For more information, call 1-888-200-4005 or go to adoptuskids.org. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt Us Kids, and the Ad Council.
Who are you?
Who can make you cheer?
And play your fight song?
Who can bring you to your feet?
Or bring you to your knees?
When the game is on the line, who do you want to take the last shot?
NCAA basketball. Who's your team?
NCAA Women's College Basketball. All day, every day, our game. These women can really play. Filling it up, knocking them down, and bringing it home. It's basketball at its purest. For family fun and great entertainment, there's nothing like it. All day, every day, our game. NCAA Women's College Basketball.
All season long, let D3Football.com be your home for all the Division III football action on the road to the Stag Bowl. From interactive blogs and message boards to columns from around the region and around the nation on your favorite teams, nobody covers NCAA Division III better than D3Football.com. As the playoffs approach, get the scoop on who's in and who's out from the experts who picked all 32 teams last year. Don't go anywhere else. Get the info from the source for Division III football at www.D3Football.com.
We've got more schools than Division I, more fans than Division II.
Hi, everybody. Sorry, a little abrupt there. We cut out the commercial and jump it on air. I am your host, Dave McHugh, broadcasting out of the Hoopsville studios here in the Baltimore area. Chris Taher doing the hard lifting behind me. Again, coming up here shortly, we will have, next, the Men's Basketball Committee Chair on the men's side, Ken Schumann, will be joining us, as will Pat Coleman. So if you have any questions for us, email us at hoopsville@d3hoops.com. That is hoopsville@d3hoops.com. Twitter us at D3Hoopsville. Hashtag us Hoopsville. Those are the best ways. There's also a chat room alongside the show. We are certainly monitoring that as well. You can ask your questions there. We certainly will get as many of your questions answered as we can. Those of you who have women's questions, we will try and get to those later in the show if you don't mind us. For now, we will cover the men's side of this for right now. As far as predictions, give me a little bit of a break. I know I got a quick IM. Predictions, knowing week one winners, hard to predict without knowing week one winners, but who would host upper right sectional? Amherst can't, most likely because of women. MIT, F&M, and Hartwick. Very good question. Guess what? We can get that kind of question answered here momentarily. And if there's anybody else, again, please let us know. Joining us on the Hoopsville hotline is men's basketball committee chair Ken Schumann, as is Pat Coleman. And I think they're there. Oh, there they are. Oh, we lost somebody. Pat Coleman got dropped, so drop Pat's line. I think we lost them both. We'll try and get them all back here in just a minute. Sorry about that, everybody. Sometimes the technology does not work the way you want it. So Pat is calling back. We're going to get Ken back on the line. Terribly sorry about all of that, everybody. We'll get him shortly. It's not as well as everything works. Sometimes it just doesn't want to work. Who do you have in the Birmingham Southern Wittenberg game? I think that's going to be a fascinating matchup. I looked at Wittenberg again when I did the top 25 last night. And I'm not as convinced as Wittenberg is as good as I thought they were. They've got some quality wins, but they've got some questionable losses. And certainly the loss to Denison, and granted Worcester struggled against Denison as well. Don't know how to make that into that. BSC's weak strength of schedule, though I've seen them a couple times and I've been impressed with their play, though they certainly laid an egg against Center. I think they've got the speed and athleticism to compete with Wittenberg, certainly. So I'm not positive how to take it, but my gut feeling says that will be a fascinating matchup. We'll see what happens. By the way, is Pat there? Because he's worried he got dropped again.
No.
There he is.
Was talking about Center or Birmingham Southern laying an egg against Center.
Yeah, that's true. They did it. They've done it a few. Center has that knack for sure. And joining us now on the Hoopsville hotline is Pat Coleman, by the way.
Yeah, and Center's played a lot of good teams this year. I mean, they were certainly a formidable opponent. Obviously, they're not still playing now, but they had an effect on this bracket at least.
Absolutely. And Ken Schumann joining us from the National Basketball Committee, the Men's Basketball Committee. Ken, welcome back to Hoopsville.
Thanks, Steve. Pat, how are you?
Good. How you doing?
We're doing well. For starters, thanks for joining us here on Monday. I know it's been a busy 48, 72-hour, several-week process here for you guys, and obviously the pressure is now a little bit off, but I appreciate you taking the time to join us here on Monday, as the committee chairs have done in the past, to answer some questions. First and foremost, I always ask this, in your mind, how did the process go this year?
I think it was great, Dave. I think the committee did a great job of identifying teams for the tournament based on the criteria that we look at all year long. Obviously, there are always tough decisions that you have to make, but I think that the committee really took its time and did some thoughtful deliberation, looked inside the numbers that we looked at into greater detail, and I think that we made the right choices. Obviously, there are always worthy teams, and, unless you can expand the tournament to include everybody, you're always going to have some teams that are left out. But I really think that the committee did a great job on identifying the teams that were the top 62 teams based on the criteria that we looked at all year long. I also thought that the committee did a good job of balancing the bracket based on the strengths of each team. And, I don't think that we've got a side of the bracket that is particularly strong compared to the others. I think that, we've got a good balance of teams. I think that we've got a good balance of geography. And I think that we've also got a good balance of teams that have not played each other and that's always important when you're entering championship competition. So all in all, I feel real good about it, and I think that we're going to have a great championship, and looking forward to a great Final Four in Salem in a couple weeks.
Ken Schumann joining us here, talking about the men's basketball championship tournament. 62 teams obviously selected and bracketed and released today at noon. And we have that bracket with us and plenty of questions. Let me start with the first one that I found. There's a lot I've got marked here, but let me start first. And Pat sure has a few more. Hopefully I don't steal too many of his. My first one is, obviously you had 2 byes to give. I think there was a lot of creativity this year, so the byes didn't go to the Northwest or to Texas as they normally do. Amherst kind of saw that one coming. I'll admit I didn't see Virginia Wesleyan coming.
Well, that was a combination of, again, where Virginia Wesleyan stood in terms of their ranking and our regional rankings, and also geography. And, those are 2 of the criteria that play into not only team selection but hosting. And, I think that we are in a good position with those 2 as having the 3-team pod. And, again, I feel good about the process that we used as a committee to make that determination.
Quick follow-up. Is it just mean that you didn't have the teams ascend to Virginia Wesleyan that normally you may had due to moving teams around like Randolph-Macon and Christopher Newport?
Right. I think that was a part of it. A lot of things changed this year, Dave. If you look at it, we've got 3 teams down in Texas, we've also got a Pool B team in Tennessee. So, there was a lot of different scenarios that we dealt with compared to past years. And again, I think the committee did a real good job of dealing with those.
Ken, was there any thought to giving the geographical bye to Whitworth and rewarding them with a home game rather than sending them, halfway across the country?
Sure. Yeah, there was. And, obviously I'm from the Northwest, so, I'm familiar with the issues that schools and teams from the West Coast have. And again, I think it was a byproduct of the fact that we only had 2 teams from the West. And when you have to deal with geography as a part of your criteria, and you're charged with limiting flights in the first round in particular, that was what we were faced with. And, it was a perfect storm. I mean, we had 3 teams in Texas that were tournament eligible. And we also had a number 2 seed, similar to Whitworth in Texas, that was tournament eligible. And so, unless we were going to package a group of teams and fly them out to the West, which didn't pencil out in terms of our charge to take geography into account, that was a decision that we were faced with. And again, I know it's a tough thing for schools in the West, but that's what we've been operating under in terms of our criteria that we have to take into consideration.
I understand that, and we laid out a scenario in our bracket where we took, Claremont could go to Wisconsin. Obviously, Claremont could very easily go to Texas as well. So we said Claremont there, had them play McMurray also, and then we sent we plucked 2 teams out of the Midwest and played them on Thursday and sent the winner out to Whitworth. It seems like that's the exact same number of flights.
Yeah, but when you get to later rounds, then you're talking about more flights. Also, you're talking about, competitive situations that maybe don't pencil out quite as well. We looked at all that, Pat, and we considered those things. We considered flying schools from the Midwest out to the West Coast, flying Claremont even up to Whitworth for a 4-team pod up there. But again, when we penciled everything out, we looked at the criteria, we evaluated it, we came up with what I thought was the best decision that we could have made based on what we had to work with.
You mentioned later round flights. In the past, later round flights hasn't been an issue. Nobody's talked about later round flights. It's always been the focus on who flies in the first weekend and since that's the only thing you guys can control, everything else kind of falls where it may. Is that not the case anymore?
No, it's the case, but again, we tried to look down the road as well. That was probably a secondary thing, that we talked about. The primary things that we talked about were those things that I've already mentioned.
I'm talking to Ken Schumann, the men's basketball committee chair here on Hoopsville. Pat Coleman joining us as well. Again, a reminder, if you have questions for the chairman that we have not asked him or you're interested in, email us at hoopsville at d3hoops.com. That's hoopsville at d3hoops.com, or Twitter us at d3hoopsville or hashtag Hoopsville. There's also the chat room if you happen to be watching to us on the Ustream side of our broadcast via Ustream versus via D3 Hoops. There's certainly ways we can get questions answered as much as we can. I've got a question on just the last couple of teams that were picked to get in. For starters, I know you had told me back in I think it was late January when we talked that the regional committee, the regional rankings, the final ones would be published. We have not seen those as of yet. Are they still to be coming?
Dave, when we talked about that, I was under the impression that you meant by the final regional rankings, the Wednesday rankings that we just did.
Okay, so the final ones after the brackets are not being released.
That's correct.
Okay.
So that's a change from previous years?
Yeah, because last year we did get those.
That is what I've been told, that the regional rankings have not been released. The last ones that were released were the Wednesday rankings.
Okay.
Mind if I ask about strength of schedule? You guys made some decisions where strength of schedule was clearly a big part of it. For example, putting Illinois Wesleyan in the field and not Lake Forest. Clearly, that meant Illinois Wesleyan had to jump Lake Forest in a regional ranking, and probably the same with Randolph-Macon versus Birmingham Southern. So my question is then, there were obviously a couple of decisions where winning percentage was valued more highly, such as St. Joe's getting in the field, NYU getting in the field over perhaps someone like WPI. I bring up WPI specifically because WPI and NYU are only 2 games apart in terms of win-loss percentage, but there's a 90-point gap in strength of schedule. At what point does that begin to reward a strength of schedule that's under 500?
Right, and those are discussions that we have, Pat. Matter of fact, you'd be a very good committee member because I think you've got the discussion points down. But let's take the first scenario that you brought up: Illinois Wesleyan and Lake Forest. There you've got a strength of schedule advantage, obviously, for Illinois Wesleyan. You've also got a winning percentage advantage for Lake Forest. A lot of things, we take into consideration. Scheduling in and of itself has a particular team, gone outside of their conference and play good competition. Sometimes we look at secondary criteria if it's warranted. We look at the number of games that they played against regionally ranked teams. If there's head-to-heads involved, we look at that. And we also look at final rankings. And, when teams come up on the board, it's based on what their ranking is. And Illinois Wesleyan, for the most part, has been ahead in their region of Lake Forest for the entire year. Some of the other ones, are basically, you boil it down to wins and losses, win percentage versus strength of schedule. And we've got some teams, as you mentioned, like Birmingham Southern, like MIT, who have a comparably large number of wins against Division III competition. And you can even throw some other schools into that category, particularly St. Joe's in the Atlantic region, and they've got a weak SOS. But, you can't discount wins. And I know coaches across the country have always, tried to impress upon the committee a game is a game. And so, you have to take that value into strong consideration, and the committee did. And I think it's a balance. You've got to have a fairly representative strength of schedule. But if you have a number of wins, nothing can substitute for winning Division III games. And, in some cases, that's what it boils down to.
Talking to Ken Schumann here. Coach, you mentioned St. Joe's. That's obviously a team that I think we didn't expect to see in the NCAA tournament. A team like Ohio Wesleyan, I know, was on that bubble that many people weren't sure. Those last few teams to get in, obviously that's the most difficult part. Can you tell us who the last ones were to get in and what maybe some of the deciding factors were?
Well, I can't tell you which ones were the last to get in, but I can tell you that, we had good discussions and we took teams. One of the things that I really respect about our committee is that we took things one by one, particularly when it came down to, the second half of the Pool C teams that were up on the board to get in. And we had long discussions about each of them. We look inside the numbers, at who they played, where they played, who they won against, how well they've done in recent games. All those things we took into consideration. I think St. Joe's, they obviously were one of the bubble teams. They, again, when you look at them and their 21-3 record, you can't discount that. And, really when you compare their strength of schedule to other teams in their region, and this is one of the things, when you go across regions, in some regions it's easier to have a little bit higher SOS because, you naturally play teams potentially that have higher SOSs. And, in their region, their SOS, no, it's not comparable to the top 5 teams that are ranked, but, they have a high win percentage compared to, the other teams we were comparing them against. And so, I think that they had a representative resume and a good body of work, and I feel good about their entrance into the tournament.
So let me ask, because you mentioned that, obviously, and I think we all know this from taking a look at it pretty in-depth sometimes, that a strength of schedule, say, in the Northeast is higher in general than it is perhaps in some other parts of the country. Do you guys take, an average SOS of the region or something like that and then weigh a team against that, or how, or is it...
No, we don't, Pat. We do it, individually, and I think that that's the way that you have to do it. I can't, you can't take an average. All that I'm saying is that, if you're in a region and, you play a regional schedule, you have an opportunity at least to play teams with stronger SOSs. That's all I'm saying.
You talk about how geography affects some of the things that happen in Texas and the West Coast. I think I'd see another spot in this bracket where geography may have come into play, and I wanted to get your take on it because we've got some fans asking about it.
Sure.
By the criteria, I would expect that probably Bethany should host St. Mary's rather than the other way around. But I'm thinking that this was done this way for either one of two reasons. One, perhaps Bethany didn't file to host, or two, is it because you send Bethany on a bus to St. Mary's, and then if they win, they continue on to Virginia Wesleyan, rather than sending St. Mary's from Eastern Shore of Maryland all the way over to West Virginia, and then both of them back to Virginia Wesleyan. Well, why don't you go ahead and explain how that works for the listeners, because I know we're getting that question out of the PAC people.
Sure. Yeah. Well, to be honest, the fact that Bethany and St. Mary's are there does have something to do with geography. There's no question about it. If you look at the map, those are schools that are within 500 miles of that pod host that can get there. I think that the rest of it, St. Mary's, they're a number 4 seed in the Mid-Atlantic, and they've got a pretty good resume. And, for them hosting, I think, again, it was a product of looking at the criteria, and you have them paired against, another strong team in terms of their resume. But, again, I think when, everything came down, the committee made the decision based on the numbers and even looking inside the numbers that we had to work with.
Talking to Ken Schumann here, the men's basketball committee chair, as we look at the men's bracket released earlier today. We got a few more minutes with him, so if you have any questions, email us at hoopsville@d3hoops.com. That is hoopsville@d3hoops.com. IM is at hoopsville2000 on your AOL IM, et cetera, et cetera. There's lots of ways to get a hold of us. There's also a chat room alongside. Another question that came up, and it's kind of down the road, as it were, and I thought it was a decent question. Obviously, you're in a situation on one side of this bracket where Amherst has the hosting for the bye right now. You also have teams in there like Franklin and Marshall, Hartwick, Staten Island who host. Let's just say winning coming out, Amherst most likely will not host next weekend if they win out because the women will have that right. What scenarios have you guys already pre-planned in that case? If an MIT wins, could they be hosting? Does a team like Franklin and Marshall still get rewarded? Does Hartwick get it? And what are we looking at possibly down the road?
Hey, Dave, those are a lot of scenarios.
Certainly.
What will happen is, we will, as a committee, evaluate the results as they transpire this week, and we will get together next weekend after all the results are in. We'll go back and take a look at the data that we have to evaluate on Sunday after everyone has played, and then we will look at what's happened on the women's side and make the determinations then based on availability to host and also based on the criteria of who will be hosting in that side of the bracket in the sectionals.
Another quick question I have for you is, obviously there's a lot of questions about exactly what does results against regionally ranked opponents mean, how much weight was put in the SOS. Obviously, we talked about that. But just to clarify, because some people can misread it their way or misread it another way or just not understand it. Results against regionally ranked opponents. How has the committee told the regional committees how to interpret that? Does that mean how many games they even played? Does that mean wins? What was the breakdown this year?
Well, I think that you look at all of it, Dave, and we've tried to impress upon the Racks that you need to look at all the data available, but obviously wins versus regionally ranked opponents are the number one thing that you would consider when evaluating the strength of teams that a particular team has played. Another thing that you look at, obviously, is who have they played outside the conference. That's another thing because you can have if you're the Wisconsin Conference out west, you're probably going to play anywhere between 4 and 6 ranked teams within your conference. Any wins that you have against ranked teams outside your conference, that's a good thing because it means that, in terms of your scheduling, you're going out and you're trying to play good Division III competition, whether it be at home or on the road. So, the committee looks at the numbers of games that teams have played against ranked opponents. Again, we have the once ranked, always ranked situation. So, those numbers may reflect wins against teams that aren't necessarily in the rankings at the end of the year, but they were at some time during the year. And again, if you've got a good number of wins against ranked teams, that is going to help you in terms of your standing. And, we look at primary criteria. That's part of primary criteria. So, when it comes down to it, if you've got a Team A, let's say, that has an advantage in the strength of schedule, and Team B that has an advantage in win-loss percentage, but Team B also has 3 more, let's say, regionally ranked wins rather than Team A, then I would say the Team B is probably going to have a bit of an advantage. Now, that doesn't always tell the story. There are other factors involved as well, other parts of primary criteria and certainly secondary criteria if we go that far. But, again, that is certainly taken into consideration and looked at in terms of primary criteria.
Talking to Ken Schumann here as we wrap up. A couple minutes left. If you have any questions to join us, please ask them as soon as possible because we only have a limited amount of time left. Obviously, hosting situations, let me just kind of get it officially, as it were. Transylvania looks like that was a decision by geographical decisions, yes or no?
Well, I think that certainly, obviously you've got a geographic situation there with where they're located and the number of teams that are in the tournament. But, they were the number 2 team for most of the year in the Midwest region. And, one of the things that the committee looks at in terms of regional rankings are 1s and 2s in each region to host. And so Transylvania was one of the schools that fit that part of the criteria. And so regardless of whether or not there were any geographic considerations involved, they would have been, in the discussion when it comes to evaluating the top 2 teams in each region for hosting opportunities.
Okay. Another quick question is I know that the committee has made an effort in years past of trying to keep, make the pods as regional as possible, put a lot of different teams in there when at all possible. I know I've seen 4 different regions in one pod before, which was kind of cool. That's not always perfect and not always possible. However, I did see a number of common region opponents in the first round when potentially there was the ability to shift it around slightly, give or take. An example I spotted was Messiah and Scranton taking on each other. Granted, it's you maybe can flip it with Becker, one of those teams. I noticed Franklin and Marshall and York, though. I actually thought that game may happen. Potentially could flip it with Christopher Newport, though I don't know if that's a reward or hurt for Christopher Newport. But I did see a lot of those kind of games kind of lined up. Another one, Rhode Island College and Salem State, whereas on the other side it's Staten Island and Ithaca. Is there any reason that sometimes what looks obvious, and I know it's not always obvious, that those games maybe weren't split a little bit more in those first rounds?
That's a really good question, Dave, and I think that, you could come up with all sorts of different scenarios for matchups, particularly in the first round. It, narrows itself a little bit when you get to the sectionals and, obviously from there on out. But, again, the committee tried to do the best that they could in terms of matching up teams that, haven't had a lot of familiarity with each other. B, we took into consideration the strength of each pod. We wanted to try to balance that out as much as we could. Obviously, geography plays a bit into it. So, like I said in the beginning, I really feel good about it. I mean, I think that obviously, there are some tweaks you can make, and there are some different matchups that, you could look at in terms of teams. But I really think when you look at the entirety of the bracket, I think that the committee really got it right, and I take my hat off to them. It's a tough job, know, and you guys do a great job. I, got to admit, I heard that you picked 60 out of 62 teams.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that I could have done that going in. So, it's a tough job not only to pick the teams, but also to, to match them up. And, in my 4 years on the committee, I've seen a lot of different matchups and a lot of different pods and a lot of different ways to put the bracket together, and I think that this stacks up with some of the better brackets that I've seen in my 4 years.
Wrap it up here with Ken Schumann. I appreciate it. By the way, I should mention athletics director at Pacific, for those who are not aware, and obviously a lot of travel in his site, and we'll see him down the road as well, certainly in Salem. And former men's basketball coach. Yes, thank you for the reminder, Pat Coleman. I should point out, obviously you have expertise in
Thanks,
this.
Pat. You haven't forgotten.
He is there. He's lingering in the background. He's still technically on the line, believe it or not. Ken, let me just say one thing before I give you the final word. Per the final regional rankings, just a thought, maybe this needs to go back and be discussed, because in the pre-championship handbook, it actually is quoted as saying Sunday, February 26th or Monday, February 27th, selection announcements of teams participating in championship, first, second round sites announced, final ranking released. I don't need an answer. I realize you can't give me one at this point, but just something to maybe go back and look at, because that's kind of where a lot of this information we're working off of has come from. So anyway, just wanted to raise that up for you. Again, don't need an answer. I know you're not maybe in a position to do so. But on that token, any final thoughts you want to share with those who are listening tonight and have been listening to your answers to a lot of this?
Well, Dave, I appreciate that, and actually I will put that on our agenda for our annual meeting in June, so we will take up the issue that you just raised. But I just want to congratulate all of the teams, the schools, the student-athletes who are part of the 2012 NCAA Division III Men's Basketball Championship. This is a great event, and congratulations to all of you that have put in such hard work and dedicated your time and effort to bring your teams this far this year. You've all had great seasons, and looking forward to a great tournament. I wish you all the best, and I look forward to seeing everyone in Salem, including you and Pat.
I will certainly be there, and always look forward to that. I don't want to speak for Pat ever.
Should I say publicly now? I believe I'm actually going to go to the women's Final Four this year, Ken. I apologize.
Oh my gosh,
Ken, you wouldn't believe this.
That's okay.
He's gone old school.
That'll be a good event.
Well, he's gone old school. He's gone old school NCAA here.
There we go. Yep.
In the NCAA parlance, we're saving 2 flights by me going to the women's Final Four.
Well, we appreciate that, Pat.
Though we might burn one this weekend, but we'll get to that another time. Hey, thanks so much, Ken, for joining us. I will certainly chat with you in the meantime, as I always do, and I appreciate you joining us, and we'll talk soon.
Looking forward to it, Dave.
All right.
Thanks again.
Pat, we'll talk to you in a few minutes as well.
All right.
And Pat Coleman, Ken Schumann, joining us here on the Hoopsville Hotline. One quick thing, Virginia Wesleyan fan Virginia points out, I just want to answer this because it's an interesting point. Virginia Wesleyan is ranked above Whitworth in your poll, talking about the D3 Hoops one. So why would you reward Whit over Virginia Wesleyan with a bye? This has nothing to do with our rankings. This has nothing to do with our rankings. This has to do with geography. This has to do with other teams in the tournament. This has to do with positioning a bye. Remember, there is a lot of other things. Virginia Wesleyan was going to be home no matter what. Whether they got a bye or not, they're going to be at home. We all knew that, especially with the win in the ODAC championship. So they're home. They were going to be rewarded. This isn't a situation where Virginia was going to get shipped out. But that being said, Whitworth deserved a home game too, I think, and didn't get it. Once again, they didn't get one when we all thought they deserved one in the second round last year, or second weekend last year. So anyway, just wanted to say that from my 2 cents. Anyway, we're going to take a very quick break. We're already behind schedule. Got to get St. Joseph's of Long Island in here as soon as we can. You're listening to Hoopsville, presented by D3Hoops.com. We'll be back right after this.
Fans than Division II and more upsets than March Madness. There's 800 programs with over 11,000 games leading to 2 national championships. And we've been covering it all for over a decade. From Eastern to Occidental, from Puget Sound to Piedmont, from Southwestern to the University of New England, and from Hope to Calvin. Nobody covers Division III basketball like we do. We're at D3Hoops.com at www.D3Hoops.com.
Amber Alert, abducted child, African American girl, 6 years old. Suspect wearing blue shirt, black jeans.
Now when an Amber Alert is issued, you can get the same information the authorities get right on your cell phone. Sign up for free at wirelessamberalerts.org. Think of it, something as simple as a free text message could free an abducted child.
All units Amber Alert canceled. Child recovered safely. Suspect is in custody.
wirelessamberalerts.org. A child is calling for help. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
Who are you?
What are your team colors?
Who can make you cheer?
Who can bring your family and friends together?
And play your fight song?
Who can bring you to your feet?
Or bring you to your knees?
When the game is on the line, who do you want to take the last shot?
And who do you want to slap high fives, jump up and down, and yell at the top of your lungs with?
There's probably a game near you today. NCAA basketball. Who's your team?
So, EJ, we've designed you a signature shoe worthy of a 3-time All-American with mad smarts and sick leadership skills. Ta-da!
There are over 380,000 NCAA student athletes.
Yeah, you got your GPA embossed, right?
I love it. And just about all of them will be going pro in something other than sports.
Can I get it in a loafer for casual Fridays? Yes. Yes.
Are you an embarrassment on the dance floor? Do you confuse state capitals and read too many celebrity gossip magazines? Well, if you answered yes, you may have what it takes to adopt a teen from foster care, because teens don't need perfection, they need you. So if you think an MP3 is a computer virus, it's okay. There are thousands of teens in foster care who would love to put up with you. For more information, call 1-888-200-4005 or go to adoptuskids.org. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt Us Kids, and the Ad Council.
NCAA Women's College Basketball. All day, every day, our game. These women can really play. Filling it up, knocking them down, and bringing it home. It's basketball at its purest. For family fun and great entertainment, there's nothing like it. All day, every day, our game. NCAA Women's College Basketball.
And welcome back to Hoopsville. I'm your host, Dave McHugh. Here on Matchup Monday, just heard from Ken Schumann. Appreciate him taking the time to do that. I know we can't get every question answered, by the way. We appreciate the fact that you may have tons, and we'll do what we can. But it is what it is sometimes, and we just can't get them all answered. Let's see here. If you have answered this already, discussed. If hosts win first 2 games, are the next 2 games there? Not necessarily. On the men's side, for example, Amherst may win their bye game, but they will not host the next weekend if the women are still in the tournament themselves, which is a safe bet, though you never know. Because the women have the right over the men. For example, and William Patterson's another example. William Patterson women are certainly have the right to host this weekend, are high enough ranked to do that. They will not, because the men have the right. Now, if both teams are still in the NCAA tournament next weekend, the women will have the right there. Now, on the other side of that, for example, last year, I think Middlebury got a bye and hosted a game on Saturday, if memory serves. St. Mary's hosted. Rochester, I don't remember what Rochester did. Make a long story short, Middlebury and St. Mary's went to Rochester because Rochester was better geographical location. So the hosts are not always cut and dry just because you win. There's a lot of factors that go into play. One of the teams that kind of jumped into the NCAA tournament may or may not have been one of the last ones. We don't know for sure, but that is St. Joseph's of Long Island, and their head coach joins us here on this show. Coach, welcome to Hoopsville.
Hi, Dave. How are you?
I am well. Now, to not screw up your name, I know we asked off air, but that does not mean we get it right. So we always like to make sure we get it right. So if in the eyes of that, can you help me out?
Right. Well, last year, Jody King said it was Mikiko, and I only knew Jody for about 10 years and had great games against him. It's pronounced Matejko. It's Ukrainian.
Okay, and it is John, correct?
Yes, it is.
So John Matejko.
Right.
Very good. So I noticed you said that in the past tense, by the way. Are you saying you two are no longer friends?
Oh, Jody?
Yeah.
Jody's a friend of all.
Oh, okay. Just wanted to make sure. You made it sound past tense like you screwed up his name, and that was it.
No.
Hey, congratulations on making the NCAA tournament, as the at-large bid, certainly. Flat out. Any surprised? Were you nervous this wasn't going to happen?
Well, I'll tell you, Dave, we've had a great group for 2 years. Last year we were 22-5.
Mm-hmm.
I think we were right on the bubble last year and almost got in.
Yes.
So we're a little upset about that. And, this year's team, 8 seniors, they've just been great. Unfortunately, we've hit a few bumps. And when we hit a bump, we really hit them hard.
Yes.
But that's the type of team that we have. We shoot threes. So some nights we look like the best team in the world, and some nights we look real average.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I have nothing.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So that's kind of the makeup of our team. So at the end there, with the number of wins that we had, and some of the great wins that we had against Eastern Connecticut, we had a close loss against Ramapo, which at the time was ranked 20th. I thought we were in pretty good shape. Quite frankly, I thought we had to make it to the finals. But at 21-3, I thought we were someplace close.
Obviously, you finished on top of the Skyline Conference at 17-1 in the conference, but you got tripped up in the semifinals by SUNY Purchase, who you had just played 5 days prior and barely beat them by 9. And I'm checking to. Yeah, I think we
beat them by 3. They were
by
up
3,
9
right?
With
It was
about 4 minutes left.
Correct. But then they kind of smoked you, as you said. It when you lose big. It was 105-81. Earlier you pointed out another loss. It was Mount St. Mary's 99-61. Just wanted to, but at that what did you say in the locker room afterward? In other words, you take a loss. You even said you probably had to get to the championship game. You certainly could use that extra regional game. What did you tell the team in the locker room after that game?
Well, once again, we're dealing with seniors that for the last 2 years giving it all. I really had. I was kind of shocked. I thought we'd give a better showing than what happened on the court. But once again, it's the makeup of our team. And both games that we lost to Mary's and to Purchase, both those teams shot 56% from 3.
Yeah.
And most nights you're not going to win when that happens. So, and we shoot a lot of threes, and we usually do that to other teams. So when it happens to us, you're taken back a little, and you're just a little surprised that it happened. And I just felt bad immediately after that game, saying, this may be the last shot you guys have at the NCAA. ECAC we make over the last 4 or 5 years, but the NCAA is a different story, and I know that was their goal.
Let's talk about those seniors. Say your senior loaded would be an understatement. Let me just do a quick math here on my screen. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, I believe. And the 6 I listed right off the bat are all of your leading scorers, I may add, and pretty much the guys who get the bulk of the playing time. There is a sophomore and a freshman who've each gotten 24 and 22 games each. Oliver Laurent, Trey Black, Chris Jimenez, Steve Velasquez,
yeah.
Vincent Russo, and Shabab Said. 15.8, 15, 14, 12.4, 10, 8.9. You're going to lose a huge chunk from this squad. It's great that they get the chance to be in the tournament for sure, but have you sensed already today that they know what's on the line now?
Well, they're a mature group, so they've kind of sensed that all year. And, I don't know how we'll play Friday. I think they're ready to play. They practiced slow today. I think they're going to practice slow the next 2 or 3 days. And if, we play our game, I think we're a tough out. Albertus Magnus is a great team, maybe one of the better teams in the tournament. So we're not sure, how we're going to compete. But I think if we do what we do and we get it going, we're a tough out.
I was going to say you're getting matched up with an Albertus Magnus team that has got one of the longest winning streaks in Division III right now. Certainly handled its business in the GNAC pretty easily. Though both of you have to travel up to Middlebury. It's kind of new surroundings for everybody in that sense. I know the news is still fresh. How are you getting the team prepared?
Well, we just do what we've done, for the last 3 months. We run, we shoot, and we try to defend in practice. And we haven't seen any tape yet. We'll be getting that tomorrow. We'll break that down. I know they have an outstanding player. And I know people that know Coach over there, and they say he's a good coach, solid coach. So, once again, we just started to prepare. We're just real happy and excited that, we have a chance to get into the NCAAs.
Well, very good. Coach, I appreciate you taking time to join us tonight. Clearly, I suspect the campus is abuzz with the fact you guys are playing, and clearly you got a lot ahead of you coming up this weekend. As always, we give the coach the final word. Any final thoughts you want to share with those who may be listening tonight?
Well, Dave, I'm a big fan of your program. I listen to it all the time, and I think D3 Hoops is really the lifeline of our coaches, and we all listen, and we learn. And, every night I get on the screen after one of our games, and I go down and see who won and lost and see what is said. I don't always agree what's said in the chat rooms, but it's interesting and fun to watch. And just the last thing is, you can't sleep on the skyline. Palmdale's going to do a great job. They have in the past. We've been in the NCAAs 3 years ago and played a tough DeSales team, and Purchase last year did well getting into the second round. So you got to give them a little love at the skyline. It's not as bad as conference as people make it out to be.
Certainly. No, we appreciate it. We'll certainly look forward to seeing how you guys play coming up this weekend, and good luck. I would love to see how your team does.
Okay, great. Thanks, Dave. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Take care.
Take care. Coach Matejko joining us from St. Joseph's of Long Island. Congratulations to them making the NCAA tournament. We're going to take a very quick break. On the other side, what is on my list for the next team, Chris? I'm actually blanking in my own mind.
Oh, we got options, Dave.
Options?
Try and get Rochester's women's coach on, Jim Scheibel, or we have a Whitworth's coach.
We'll make that
either.
We can go either, is what you say. If you made calls to everybody and said they're flexible, this is good.
Rochester was not there at the time, so...
All right. We'll go to Whitworth on the other side of the commercial break, and we'll work on getting Coach Scheibel on as soon as we can. You're listening to Hoopsville, presented by D3Hoops.com. We'll be back right after this.
Who are you?
What are your team colors?
Who can make you cheer?
Who can bring your family and friends together?
And play your fight song?
Who can bring you to your feet?
Or bring you to your knees?
When the game is on the line, who do you want to take the last shot?
And who do you want to slap high fives, jump up and down, and yell at the top of your lungs with?
There's probably a game near you today. NCAA basketball. Who's your team?
So, EJ, we've designed you a signature shoe worthy of a 3-time All-American with mad smarts and sick leadership skills. Ta-da!
There are over 380,000 NCAA student athletes.
Yeah, you got your GPA and boss, right?
I love it. And just about all of them will be going pro in something other than sports.
Can I get it in a loafer for casual Fridays? Yes. Yes.
Are you an embarrassment on the dance floor? Do you confuse state capitals and read too many celebrity gossip magazines? Well, if you answered yes, you may have what it takes to adopt a teen from foster care, because teens don't need perfection, they need you. So if you think an MP3 is a computer virus, it's okay. There are thousands of teens in foster care who would love to put up with you. For more information, call 1-888-200-4005 or go to adoptuskids.org. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt Us Kids, and the Ad Council.
NCAA Women's College Basketball. All day, every day, our game. These women can really play. Filling it up, knocking them down, and bringing it home. It's basketball at its purest. For family fun and great entertainment, there's nothing like it. All day, every day, our game. NCAA Women's College Basketball.
Daddy, I'm only 3 years old, but when you look at me, I could see your wheels turning. You're dreaming about what am I going to be when I grow up? A Major League first baseman? Maybe a point guard for the national championship team? Or the winner of the Heisman Trophy?
The odds of a child becoming a professional athlete? 1 in 16,000. The odds of a child being diagnosed with autism? 1 in 150. You know the odds of autism. Now learn some of the signs. No big smiles or other joyful expressions by 6 months. No back and forth sharing of sounds or facial expressions by 9 months. And no babbling by 12 months. To learn more of the signs and more about autism, visit autismspeaks.org.
So, Dad, let's keep dreaming the impossible while looking out for the possible, okay?
Brought to you by Autism Speaks and the Ad Council.
Welcome back to Hoopsville. I'm your host, Dave McHugh, working out of the Hoopsville studios as always. Hope you are all doing well. If you have any questions for us, email us at hoopsville@d3hoops.com. That's hoopsville@d3hoops.com. You can IM us at Hoopsville2000 on your AOL IM or join us in the chat room. Certainly lots to talk about after the brackets were released today. Certainly lots to go over and so on and so forth. If you have any questions, we'll try and get them answered. We'll do what we can. A little bit of a fluid show tonight. Hopefully up ahead we'll have Robin Hamilton, the women's committee chair, join us to talk about it. The women's selections. We'll also talk hopefully to Jim Scheibel, sorry, I keep adding an R there. Scheibel from Rochester to talk about Rochester being left out of the women's committee or the women's bracket as well. But we're going to jump over and talk to Whitworth men's basketball coach joining us here. Coach, welcome to Hoopsville.
Thank you.
And obviously welcome to the NCAA tournament, but you kind of knew that already.
Yeah, we're excited to punch our ticket over the last weekend, and obviously, we're looking forward to the bracket being released today.
Well, the bracket has come out, and I'm going back to check, and you guys will take a nice flight, as it were, to sunny Texas. Granted, considering the weather you guys have had in the Northwest, that might not be that bad a thing. Granted, you are not hosting. We'll get to that in just a minute, but you will take on McMurray, who was a surprise entrance, winning the automatic qualifier there, and then potentially if you win Mary Hardin-Baylor or Trinity, Texas. Those games all at Mary Hardin-Baylor. Your reactions just in general to the fact of who you've got for an opponent and such?
Well, obviously, we're kind of in the gathering of information stage right now, and trying to learn as much as quickly as possible about McMurray. Obviously, they play in a tough conference, and beat a very good team in Mary Hardin-Baylor to get to their conference championship and earn entry to the tournament. So certainly a lot of respect there. I know they're a senior-laden group, and we're looking forward to the opportunity.
This is obviously a very good squad. Whitworth is that came off of a pretty solid run last year with a lot of talent, but a lot of coaching changes. You're in your first year as head coach there at the head of the Pirates and such. Give everybody a sense of this team. Now, obviously, the pollsters have you guys pretty high. You've had a pretty good season, but give everybody a little bit of a sense of who the Pirates are this year.
Well, I think Whitworth has had such tremendous success, prior to my arrival here. The name, I think, has earned some respect across the country due to that. And obviously last year they had a lot of success, being ranked number one in the country. And Coach Hayford did a tremendous job here establishing a culture of excellence, and so it was a great opportunity for us as a coaching staff to come into, and obviously a great culture in place. But that being said, we did lose a National Player of the Year from last year's team. We lost another senior, David Riley, who scored over 1,500 points, and arguably the best defensive player in our conference, and Clay Gebbers. So we had a lot of turnover, not only with the coaching transition, but also just in terms of some really talented kids and some guys that had won a lot of games here at Whitworth. So, I've been really proud of our senior group, the leadership that they exhibited during the transition, and we're able to have some young guys step up throughout the course of the season and fill some of those gaps, and have really received a big contribution from Idris Lassisi, who's our leading scorer, who came in with us as a staff. So, we've been very pleased to have the success that we've had to date. I think our schedule prepared us well for the NCAA tournament and playing Wash U early in the year, and played Wisconsin Whitewater down in Texas before the holidays, and obviously our conference, has had a number of talented teams this year, and UPS and Whitman that were kind of right on the outside looking in.
I was going to say, when you walked in, and we'll get to your background in just a minute. I don't know how well you know the Division III teams, but when you looked at your schedule, you did your research, and you looked at it, did you want to call up the former coach and go, thanks?
Well, as we learned more, there was certainly some days where we may have wished the schedule wasn't quite as completed, but we don't shy away from any of those opportunities here. I think it's helped establish the program to the level that it is now, and those are the type of opportunities that we strive for in terms of our schedule, and having the opportunity to play teams like Washington U and Calvin and Whitewater and some of those teams in the non-conference to hopefully prepare us for what we hope are long postseason runs.
Let's give everybody a quick background check on you, because the rest of these questions are going to be maybe not understood unless I tell it. For starters, you played for Lehigh, eventually became assistant coach and associate head coach for the Lehigh team. You scored 1,500-plus points for them. Certainly an outside shooter as I look at your bio, 262 three-pointers, still a school record at Lehigh. You did do a stint director of basketball operations at Kent State at one point, but spent the last number of years at Lehigh. So obviously you have a major Division I background. You have an East Coast background. I certainly am familiar with Lehigh and the Patriot League here on the East Coast. You're now out in the great Northwest. You're in Division III. You're kind of in a geographical island, as it were, in Division III as well. What's been your take on it? What was your attraction to it, et cetera, et cetera?
Well, it was interesting, with my background in college at Lehigh and throughout, my first few years coaching on the East Coast and in Ohio. Obviously, was exposed to a lot of very good basketball at the Division I level, and also, learned a lot about the Division III landscape with all the programs out east. But I grew up on the West Coast. I grew up in Seattle and played high school basketball for my grandfather at Mercer Island High School. And so the Northwest has always kind of been home for me, and I knew about the tradition that had been established at Whitworth, and the university itself really fit me to a T. And so it was one of those opportunities that really jumped off the page.
Talking to Coach, how do you say your last name? Is it Logie?
Yes, it's
okay.
Logie.
Very good,
Yep.
Just the way it looks. Matt Logie from Whitworth, men's basketball, in his first season. This is your first selection process in Division III. This is your first Division III tournament. Clearly, we do things a little differently in Division III than they do in D1 when selecting teams and shipping them around and sending them elsewhere. Your initial reactions to the process as you've learned it?
Well, it's been a learning process to understand the different aspects, especially when it comes down to scheduling and trying to prepare your program, for a postseason opportunity. With that being said, coming from the Patriot League, I was never in a situation where really multi-bids were going to be an option. So, we set our goals at the beginning of the year as a team to first, win our conference championship in the regular season. Obviously, that impacts your seeding for the Northwest Conference tournament, and then win that as our second goal to have this type of opportunity. And I think in doing so, we tried to also schedule and prepare ourselves for an opportunity to get an at-large bid if that opportunity should present itself. But I know the process itself is different, but at the end of the day, you're going to have to win games on the road. You're going to have to be able to play in a lot of different places against a lot of different styles, whether you're at the Division I level or the Division III level. And so we worry about what we can control, and I've been really pleased with how we've progressed throughout the season.
Being shipped to Texas, usually Whitworth, just to give you, if no one's giving you the background, usually Whitworth ends up facing off, either getting a bye and facing a California team or facing a Northwest team again and going to California. This Texas thing's a little bit different in recent years. I know you're not as familiar with it, but has there been any reaction to it from anybody, whether it be your team, the athletics department, whatever, from anybody today at Whitworth?
Not a whole lot. Obviously, it's kind of in a whirlwind right now, trying to finalize travel plans and prepare for practice and the games coming up. But with the history that I knew about and kind of the type of season that we'd had, being 24-2 against Division III teams and having some of the marquee wins that we had, I felt like we put ourselves in the discussion to potentially host a game and maybe have an opportunity for one of those buys. But you're splitting hairs when it comes down to it with as many good teams as there are across the country, and we've prepared all season long to go on the road and win, and fortunately we've been able to do that throughout the year. And I think one of the things that it's really hard to keep track of across the country is head-to-head scores and comparisons and things like that. And in fact, our only 2 Division III losses came where we had some fairly significant injury issues. So it's one of those things where you can't worry about what you can't control, and we've been very fortunate to start playing our best basketball here as of late, and hopefully that will carry us through the tournament.
Talking to Matt Logie, we're wrapping up here. I know you were at the San Antonio tournament over the Christmas break. I've heard allusions of who may be in there. Are you going to be going back to that next year? Have you made up your mind yet?
We haven't finalized our schedule right now.
I've got a couple ideas for you.
I'm open to them. Open to them.
You could always return to Vegas for the D3Hoops.com Classic.
Yeah, I know. I know they were down there the year before I got here and played some good teams. And one of our biggest challenges here, obviously geographically, is getting home games, and so that's kind of been our initial focus. And we also are willing to travel and play good teams wherever that may be. So trying to find that balance and the balance with your strength of schedule also is a tricky one.
Absolutely. By the way, any plans to go to Salem now that you're in Division III and get a taste of the championships?
Well, I would love to go to Salem, preferably with
your team.
My team behind me. So, right now we're worried about McMurray University, and I know that they're going to be game and ready for us this weekend, and just got to take it one step at a time.
Obviously, the Division I coaches all gather at the Division I championship for the most part. Division III men's coaches all gather at the Division III championship as well. Not all of them, but a very, very good core of them do. So if I will extend the invitation from them to you to join them at Salem for the championship, even if you can't be there with your team. Coach, I appreciate you joining us here on Hoopsville. Thank you so much. Congratulations on a very successful first year. And good luck this coming weekend as you travel to Texas, obviously, to take on McMurray and then hopefully Trinity or Mary Hardin Baylor. As always, though, here on Hoopsville, we give the coach the final word. Any final thoughts you want to share with those who are listening?
Well, I just appreciate you having me on. We're really excited to start this journey, and appreciate everything that you do to expose what I think is really good basketball across the country.
No problem. We appreciate it. You joining us. Thank you so much. Good luck, and we'll talk soon.
Thanks a lot.
All right, Coach Logie joining us from Whitworth. Appreciate him taking that. Chris, go ahead and just give a call to whoever you want to give a call to. I know that. You know who I want you to call, but we'll let Chris do the dirty work. We won't take a break here as we try and squeeze in a few other people. Got a couple questions. One of them was, how do I think Macon will do in Ohio? Randolph-Macon we're referring to. Randolph-Macon into the NCAA tournament and will be rewarded as they will travel. Sorry, I'm trying to find there they are. They will travel and play Capital at Worcester with a chance of then playing Maryville. I think they can match up pretty well with Capital. Capital's been a little tricky this year at 18-9. Let's say they then face Worcester. That is going to be a great game. I'm a little nervous about Randolph-Macon. They've worried me. As much as they looked good in the middle of the season, they've also shown me some games like the W&L game, the game against Randolph, though Randolph nearly picked off Virginia Wesleyan as well. Worry me just a little bit. Not sure if they can get past Worcester. That being said, I'm worried about Worcester. I know they don't have a lot of losses, but they struggle against Denison as well. They don't seem to play a full 40. So those matchups out there certainly fascinate me. I don't see Maryville maybe getting past a Worcester, though that could happen. I think Capital is going to be a good test in that first round. Then I think Randolph-Macon gets us another good test against Worcester should they get on to that point in time. I think there's some other questions quickly on email. Chris, thumbs up or down on what we may or may not have down so far? Jeez, Chris, we are not doing well here with trying to get other guests into the show here. I know we got some women's questions coming up here. I also have some men, so hold on a quick second as I juggle a few things here and figure out what everybody's trying to talk about and asking of questions. Let's jump on a women's question here. Well, okay, that's for the women's committee chair. So you know what? I will wait until she's on the show. Why does Thomas More get to host again after losing to St. Vincent and Simpson in their regular season? Let's start with that one. Thomas More is most likely hosting because they are a geographical located team that can do some good for the NCAA women's team. As Pat Coleman has started to say, check the map. If you'll notice, they are a great position for Louisiana College to be able to go to Thomas More without having to deal with a flight. Maryville is also near Thomas More, and they can bring in an Illinois Wesleyan. So Thomas More is hosting because of geographical location. That is the biggest reason for them. I might be... Cincinnati, if they needed a flight. I'm not sure. I thought Louisiana College could get there, maybe not. I could be wrong now that Pat mentions it. But obviously, Cincinnati's an easy place for them to fly into. Why does St. Vincent have to travel to Juniata again for the second consecutive year? I don't know. We'll ask the committee that. They're trying to be bracket evenly. I know they're trying to shuffle teams out and around and in different places. Why they sent St. Vincent to Juniata for the second consecutive year, I don't have a good answer for you. Maybe we'll get one from the committee chair. We'll see what goes on and try and figure things out. If you have any other questions, email us at hoopsville@d3hoops.com. That's hoopsville@d3hoops.com. You can Twitter us as well. Twitter at D3Hoopsville or hashtag Hoopsville. We'll certainly try and answer your questions there. Let's see, what else do I have? We also have the chat room. If you happen to be listening to us on Ustream, I know there's a number of you in there chatting it up. Please don't shy away of asking questions. I know Pat Coleman is in on the board there answering some questions. And other things, et cetera, et cetera. So we'll try and get it answered. Chris, how we doing?
Still nothing right now, Dave.
Okay, we'll take a quick commercial break then, see if we can get somebody up on the line here. You're listening to Hoopsville, presented by D3Hoops.com. We'll be back right after this.
Who can make you cheer?
And play your fight song?
Who can bring you to your feet?
Or bring you to your knees?
When the game is on the line, who do you want to take the last shot?
NCAA basketball. Who's your team?
All season long, let D3Football.com be your home for all the Division III football action on the road to the Stag Bowl. From interactive blogs and message boards to columns from around the region and around the nation on your favorite teams, nobody covers NCAA Division III better than D3Football.com. As the playoffs approach, get the scoop on who's in and who's out from the experts who picked all 32 teams last year. Don't go anywhere else. Get the info from the source for Division III football at www.d3football.com.
Amber alert, abducted child, African-American girl, 6 years old, suspect wearing blue shirt, black jeans.
Now when an Amber Alert is issued, you can get the same information the authorities get right on your cell phone. Sign up for free at wirelessamberAlerts.org. Think of it, something as simple as a free text message could free an abducted child.
All All units, Amber Alert canceled. Child recovered safely. Suspect is in custody.
WirelessAmberAlerts.org. A child is calling for help. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
We've got more schools than Division I, more fans than Division II, and more upsets than March Madness. There's 800 programs with over 11,000 games leading to 2 national championships. And we've been covering it all for over a decade. From Eastern to Occidental, from Puget Sound to Piedmont, from Southwestern to the University of New England, and from Hope to Calvin. Nobody covers Division III basketball like we do. We're at D3Hoops.com at www.d3hoops.com.
And welcome back to Hoopsville, everybody. I'm your host, Dave McHugh, broadcasting out of the Hoopsville studios as always. May not have the graphic ready for this, but we will we'll get them on the air as quick as we can. Rochester women's basketball coach Scheibel joins us on the Hoopsville hotline here. Coach, welcome in. I know we have a short bit of time here, but I appreciate you taking the time to join us here tonight.
No problem, Dave. Be happy to be here.
Well,
not overly happy.
I was going to say, I'll give you that if you are truly happy.
Little disappointed, but there's other people in our shoes as well, so we understand.
Let's start with the brutality of it a little bit. Rochester women not dancing in the NCAA tournament, a team that was regionally ranked number 1 last week, even though you took 2 losses and stayed number 1. Take another loss this week against Emory and seemingly drop off the board. I know that's not entirely true. We don't know what the final regional rankings. We'll get into that a bit later. But just the initial reaction, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, it was an interesting season for us. We started 17-0, and then to lose 6 of our last 8, we have really no one to blame but ourselves. I mean, you want to get in, you got to win some games at the end, even though start really strong. So that was a little bit of a disappointment. But I think our regional ranking last week, I was a little surprised by it. I expected to drop after losing 2 games. I guess they thought our strength of schedule kept us in that spot, but. It might have been a case of, 1 more loss and you come off the board. So, we're disappointed, but, I was on the committee for 5 years. I know how it works. It's not easy decisions. So we're just going to have to live with it.
Let's talk quickly about the how the season wrapped up. 3 tough losses, 2 of them on the weekend were, Case Western Reserve, Carnegie Mellon, and then obviously Emory, who probably was gunning for you a little bit. Did everything just kind of unravel on you guys? What do you think happened?
That's a good question. Wish I could give you a definitive answer. We were moving along real well. Then we ran into Chicago, which I feel is an absolutely top team in the country right now. And WashU got us at home. So we lost a couple of games there, but we lost them to some really high-level opponents. And we come back, we win to Brandeis and NYU, which I thought were 2 good games that we played. And then we went on the road, and Case, who's definitely an up-and-comer, I mean, they're just getting better and better. They knocked us off by a point. And then Carnegie, who I think is going to be much better as you see going forward, got us. And, were they games that we could have won? Sure, we could have won them. But I have to give credit to the other teams. But, if we're an NCAA tournament team, we find a way to win those games. And, that's the disappointing part, that we just couldn't find a way to win in the end. And if I could explain it, I would. I'd probably get paid a lot of money if I could tell you what happened, because I could tell some other people. But every now and then I've seen this happen to teams, and it just happened to us this year.
Won 17 in a row to start the season, and then lost 6 of the last 8 to end up 19-6. You talk about being on the committee before and the tough decisions. From your vantage point, you kind of alluded to it. Did you think Rochester just wasn't a team that they could find any justification to bring into the tournament?
Well, I think you could have found a justification to bring us in.
True.
But I think at some point, having been on the committee, there's probably, if there's 20 slots available for Pool Cs, I really view there's like 23 to 27 teams at that point who feel they have a legitimate claim to be at one of those 20 spots. We sifted through it, the 5 years that I was on it. And coming down 18, 19, 20, those were the hardest decisions we had to make. So is there a justification for Rochester being in there? Sure, there is. But there's also a justification for us not being in there. So I understand the committee. They have a tough job. And, they've got to really, pinch pennies down at the end to find out who they feel is the strongest teams. I looked at the bracket, and you can make a case for all of them. So, once again, we did it to ourselves. There's nothing more I can say other than, we could have been in there, but we weren't.
In your past experience, has ever been the conversation how you finished the season ever come up?
No. I mean, that's not part of the criteria.
Right.
I do remember, I think it was 4 or 5 years ago, NYU, who's got an outstanding program as well, going down the stretch, they lost their last 5 to finish 18-7 and still got in. But, for that example, I'm sure you can find a counterexample, and, we're the counterexample this year. So it's really how it shakes out each year. I can't tell you. I mean, I looked at the board and I followed it pretty closely. In my calculations, thought we were in, but my calculations don't count.
Neither do ours, Coach.
I wish yours did, because you had a.
I know.
But I once again, I've been on the committee. I know how hard it is, and I always know that there's going to be 3, 4, 5 teams that are really upset at the end, and we just happen to be one of them this year.
Finally, before we let you go, how did you broach this with the team? Have you broached it with the team?
We haven't really been able to meet. It's been a busy day here. If we had gotten in, we would have had a meeting tonight to discuss, where we go from here. But we're going to meet midweek and kind of talk about it. And to be honest with you, I'm not sure what's going to be on the agenda. We have to cover some things, but I think we're all kind of devastated right now. But as I said, we had it in our control and we didn't finish it. So we're going to have to live up to that and, hopefully get better and, look towards next year.
Well, Coach, I appreciate you taking time to join us here on Hoopsville, albeit short and albeit bitter. I certainly appreciate you taking the time and giving us your insight on how everything transpired. Obviously, good luck down the road. We always enjoy watching the Yellow Jackets play and of course, hearing JC to last call the games as well. So he might want to call you, by the way, about that, since he's being left out. But nonetheless, we always give the coach the final word. Any final thoughts you may have that you want to share with those who may be listening?
I just want to thank you guys for doing what you do. I mean, I'll be honest, I check your board or check your website all the time, and I know a lot of our players and parents do. So we appreciate what you do, and I think you guys did a great selection, Monday. So we enjoy it all, but best of luck to the teams that are in. I hope they all do really well.
Very good. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Thank you for checking out the boards as well. And we will talk to you soon.
Thank you, Dave.
All right, take care.
Okay, bye.
Jim Scheibel joining us from Rochester women's basketball. Again, 17 in a row to start the season, then lost 6 of their last 8, fell from number 1 in the regional rankings to completely out of the NCAA tournament. You heard him say it, though. He was surprised they stayed number 1 as well last week. But nonetheless, they are out of the NCAA tournament. By the way, I think that is 2 coaches tonight who have actually said they read the boards. I can't tell you how many coaches tell me they don't read the boards. Now, they could be lying. I will give you this. But a lot of them I know for sure do not check those boards, because I can tell by some of what we talk about that they haven't been reading the boards. So impressive. We're 2 for 2 tonight. Not too bad. By the way, hopefully coming up, we'll be talking to Robin Hamilton. She should have been landing in Seattle right about now, and we aren't going to harass her just yet. But hopefully we'll get her up here on the Hoopsville line here soon. Pat Coleman will join us. We'll also try and give you some predictions after looking at the brackets the way they are now. Excuse me, et cetera, et cetera. As my voice, I think, for doing 2 days' worth of shows here is starting to show its signs. Chris, you might have to take over. I just hate to... I hate to tell you that.
Dave, just let me know. When you call to the bullpen, I'm ready to go.
We might have to. We're going to have to probably call to the bullpen, actually, and get Pat Coleman here. Let's take a break. We'll do maybe predictions on the men's side while we wait for Robin Hamilton to settle in, and then we'll get her on the line and talk women's basketball. You're listening to Hoopsville, presented by D3Hoops.com. We'll be back after this.
Are you an embarrassment on the dance floor? Do you confuse state capitals and read too many celebrity gossip magazines? Well, if you answered yes, you may have what it takes to adopt a teen from foster care, because teens don't need perfection, they need you. So if you think an MP3 is a computer virus, it's okay. There are thousands of teens in foster care who would love to put up with you. For more information, call 1-888-200-4005 or go to adoptuskids.org. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt Us Kids, and the Ad Council.
So, EJ, we've designed you a signature shoe worthy of a 3-time All-American with mad smarts and sick leadership skills. Ta-da!
There are over 380,000 NCAA student athletes.
Yeah, you got your GPA and boss, right?
I love it. And just about all of them will be going pro in something other than sports.
Can I get it in a loafer for casual Fridays? Yes. Yes.
Who are you?
What are your team colors?
Who can make you cheer?
Who can bring your family and friends together?
And play your fight song?
Who can bring you to your feet?
Or bring you to your knees?
When the game is on the line, who do you want to take the last shot?
And who do you want to slap high fives, jump up and down, and yell at the top of your lungs with?
There's probably a game near you today. NCAA basketball. Who's your team?
NCAA Women's College Basketball. All day, every day, our game. These women can really play. Filling it up, knocking them down, and bringing it home. It's basketball at its purest. For family fun and great entertainment, there's nothing like it. All day, every day, our game. NCAA Women's College Basketball.
And welcome back to Hoopsville. We'll be talking more women's basketball here in a little bit, as we hopefully will talk to Robin Hamilton, the women's committee chair, coming up, as we don't want to harass her too much. I did not get her flight number, so I'm not tracking it, so I'm not quite sure if she's gotten in from her trip from Indianapolis. By the way, in all of my years of public address announcing, 17 to be exact, all of my years of doing this show, all of my years of calling games for D3, including a football game for St. John Fisher last year with a sinus cold and 2 basketball games. I've never had my throat feel like it's going to go out, and right now it does. But nonetheless, we're going to keep going on here. Pat Coleman will join us now on the Hoopsville hotline and join me and maybe help save my voice a little bit here. Pat,
yeah, well, the show must go on, right?
The show must go on. I can't believe it. It's just like literally in the last 3 minutes. It's shutting down. Maybe not enough fluids. We drink it down some Gatorade here. And sponsor ad. Yeah, we could always get that sometime. Let's talk about the men's bracket here before we get Robin in here, and we'll do predictions maybe after we talk to Robin. Actually, before we do that, now that I got you by yourself without Ken.
Yeah.
A couple reactions. No, just a couple reactions. First off, reactions to the fact that final rankings aren't released. I know I've heard that said it was going to be done. It seems like that and a few other things make me feel like we maybe took a step backwards.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, it's hard to argue with that. It felt like we were on a route to openness, and we seem to be taking a big U-turn. I was pretty sure I read somewhere in an NCAA publication about 2 or 3 years ago that they were going to try to be more open with this process, and it seems like we're kind of going the opposite direction. So I may have to look that up and raise that with our friends in Indianapolis up at higher levels of the organization, so to speak, and see if we can find out what exactly is going on here, because we were doing well, and then it's kind of inching backwards in a lot of sports.
And here's the thing: transparency is not a bad thing in many ways. Granted, too much transparency sometimes isn't good either. I'm not going to try and pretend that we need to be completely transparent in a lot of this, because I don't want to be transparent. And he didn't say who the last team's in, and I don't have a problem with him not saying that, because you don't want to sit here and start parsecing all that. But when you have a publication that says it, when I swear we've had him say it, when we've had it happen in the past, when we've had other openness, and there's a lot of questions on how this all works, I don't understand why that can't be an understood. Hiding seems stupid.
Yeah, they don't want to answer questions, and I think that one of the things in Division III is it's a little easier to hide because, aside from us, CBS isn't going to call them on it, right?
No.
Always nobody's going to be sitting there and slamming them for putting George Mason in the field, so to speak. So I think that we what we have to do is try to hold their feet to the fire a little bit, and we'll certainly continue to do that. I think the role of the media, right, is always a little bit as a watchdog, and even though we work with them on some things, we need to continue to make sure that they live up to what the readership and what the fan base expects of them, because we're the people who are able to get an audience with them and get them on shows like this, and meet with them on record, off the record, whatever. Right. So we need to continue to do that, obviously.
And I should point out also, ESPN and CBS work with the NCAA, and they also question them. So this isn't something that is abnormal of a relationship.
I mean, those guys also pay billions of dollars too.
Well, we certainly do not. Last I knew.
You pay hundreds of dollars.
There you go. Hey, let's talk about the brackets, as it were. And we are getting other questions out there as well. Let's start upper right-hand quadrant, if you don't mind, just because that's where my eyes went to first. Amherst getting the bye, and obviously what we alluded to for 10 days, by the way, working out. The women on Amherst side will be hosting as well, and so the what if turned out to be true. Where in the upper right of the upper right, with Amherst hosting and Franklin and Marshall hosting York, Western Connecticut, and Christopher Newport, with the quote-unquote play-in game of NYU and Misericordia against Amherst.
Yeah. And to people who refer to it as a play-in game, I remind people that this isn't like a 16-17. This is an 8-9, remember, because there's a bye. So there's a number 16 seed who's in the field but playing somewhere else. And then there's a Pool C team who's not in the field because our bracket isn't 64 teams.
And sometimes it's not even 8-9. It could be just a different breakdown of that number.
It generally
it's close.
You should think of it as 8-9, because if you think of it as a play-in game, then it's really not.
Right.
You get a different feeling about it. These teams should be relatively evenly matched. For all the talk about NYU today, it was still kind of cool to see their reaction. I don't know if you saw the video that got spread around this afternoon.
I saw the tweet, and then when I went to look for it to use it for Hoopsville, I couldn't find it. So
it's fantastic. It's NYU's reation to getting put in the field, and there's joy like that on a bunch of campuses. Even I think if you're a Pool C lock, there's still some of that feeling of relief. Maybe not if you're one of the top 10 teams or something like that with an automatic bid.
Right.
I saw Wash U's reaction, for example, on the men's side, and it was like,
okay.
Oh no, I'm sorry, that's not it. Not Wash U. Oh, I'm so sorry. Endicott's reaction.
Oh.
It was like a really delayed reaction, like, oh, we should celebrate now because they just mentioned our name, even though they'd been on the screen for like 2 or 3 minutes already before Endicott's name was actually read. But for NYU, haven't been in the field for more than a decade. Yeah. Just a great feeling for them. So it kind of, just a reminder that that's a campus too, where I think for a Thursday night game they're going to pack that place.
Oh, yeah.
It's going to be loud. It's going to be crazy. What those Friday night UAA games are like there.
I would love to get up there for a game sometime. Unfortunately, getting to New York City isn't always the easiest thing from the Baltimore area. But man, every time I watch it on video, it's they're packed.
And then so NYU will get its moment of glory,
Yep.
and then almost assuredly get eliminated on Saturday if they don't get eliminated on Thursday.
Well, yeah, Amherst, who is a juggernaut right now, certainly playing very good basketball there. Franklin and Marshall, York, Western Connecticut, and Christopher Newport coming out of there. Don't know if the Coach Gamber magic can continue against the Franklin and Marshall squad, but Glenn Robinson's kicking the committee a little bit right now because the last guy he wanted to see was his friend Coach Gamber, because he said on Hoopsville last night, if there's one guy who figures him out, it's Coach Gamber.
Well, and I think we all knew that was coming too, right?
Yeah,
Franklin and Marshall is one of the top 2 seeds in that region, and York is 18-10. And like we were talking about last night, pods tend to have a highly ranked team, a team that kind of won as an upset in its conference tournament. Someone who's got double-digit losses, and then 2 teams are fairly evenly matched. So I don't know if. I think Western Connecticut would be my favorite against Christopher Newport, but that still should be a pretty interesting game. And then, if it ends up being a Western Connecticut F&M game, that's going to be a pretty interesting contrast. And to think about all the talk that we've had about Franklin and Marshall and how they've really locked down on defense over the last 3 or 4 weeks of the season, to go against Daquan Brooks, Oh my goodness! I want to make sure I get a tape of that game if I can't watch it live, because that's going to be a fantastic job that they're going to try to have to do on him, and it may help inform our All-American team selection as well.
Just slightly. So you think it's going to be who again? I'm sorry.
I figure it'll probably be Western Connecticut against F&M on Saturday.
I don't know. I think Christopher Newport could surprise, but I agree with you. The way Western Connecticut's playing, I certainly want to lean towards that. Hartwick, Farmingdale State, MIT, Skidmore. Interesting situation here. MIT not hosting. You can deduce that they did not get ahead of Middlebury. That was probably based on strength of schedule. They go out certainly probably with a chip on their shoulder. This is a good test for Hartwick, for sure.
Yeah. Hartwick. You remember Hartwick got off to that great start this season. They played a lot of games on the road. They didn't play a lot of real tough games in that stretch, but they did play a lot of them away from home. Not the case here, but obviously a different test when you get into the NCAA tournament. And one of the things that kind of the parallel I was thinking about yesterday or the day before was Hartwick streaks through the regular season, top seed in the Empire 8 Conference tournament, a lot like the Ithaca teams a few years ago. Ran the table in the Empire 8, if I remember correctly, and then got bounced right away, and then got bounced right away in the NCAA tournament as well. So Hartwick needs to kind of guard against that happening. I don't know if Farmingdale State can or not. They're certainly, I think they're going to be very athletic, and they got the big man in the middle who we wrote about around the region last week, I think, if not the week before.
Yeah.
And then on the other side, MIT Skidmore is something, we've obviously both seen Skidmore play, and they've got some talent, but MIT has a lot of talent as well.
And so you think coming out of that will be?
We're actually doing, I guess predictions means predictions, right?
Kind of.
I think I got to go chalk here and say MIT against Hartwick, but I think MIT advances, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I would agree with you. I think MIT advances out of there as well. Staten Island, Ithaca, Rhode Island College, Salem State.
For Ithaca, 14-13. This is about as best a first-round matchup as you could possibly get for them. We talked about last night on the show the teams they could have played. We mentioned F&M. We mentioned Cabrini. Those are teams that you would expect a 14-13 team to get matched up against, not Staten Island. I know Staten Island is the number one team in the mythical Atlantic regional rankings, but they are not of a national caliber, I think, as some of the other teams that we thought Ithaca might end up playing. So Ithaca's got a shot here, I think, in this, it's a 15-2 game, basically. The Ithaca would be the lowest seeded team in this bracket, and Staten Island is not Amherst, so therefore they'd be the two. I think there's a shot here. I think Staten Island does win, but I think Ithaca certainly has a shot at this. And I think on the other side, Rhode Island College is just playing way too well right now. And in fact, to be honest with you, I picked Rhode Island College to come out of this pod. But then again, I picked Rhode Island College to come out of the pod last year, and they didn't disappoint me last year either. So people say you don't respect Rhode Island College. I said we pick Rhode Island College to outperform its seed every year in the NCAA tournament. And by the way, the Anchormen do not disappoint us. They keep making us look good.
No, absolutely. By the way, Pat has usually one of two ways of this. You either should be happy he's picking you, or in some cases, not so happy. I've seen it go.
Right.
I've seen it go the other way, and I think I know you're alluding.
Well, that's sure. Yeah, Guilford.
Yeah, Guilford would be a example. There's another one from last year, though. I don't remember who it is.
It's really this is a difficult tournament to pick.
Oh, this is extremely difficult.
I think we're pretty good with the Cinderella picks. We're not so great with the chalk picks. Chalk doesn't necessarily mean a whole lot in Division III when you don't play each other nationally to get a good comparative seeding.
Going through all the games, I'm starting to kind of realize in the back of my head is going to take us forever. So let me pod this up a little bit more.
Pod it up.
Strength of the schedule, or strength of each pod, as it were. In the upper right, some of the favorites you see to be dancing next weekend, let's say, or into the sectional round. Amherst, most likely, it sounds from you. Maybe Western Connecticut or F&M. Do you know?
Nah, I think either one of those two. I would certainly think Western Connecticut has a shot to pull the upset, but F&M's a tough place to play. So if it were anywhere else, I might go with Western Connecticut, but I think F&M at home.
And then MIT and Rhode Island College. On the lower right, Virginia Wesleyan gets the bye. St. Mary's or Bethany will then travel there. Mary Hardin, Baylor, Trinity, Texas, Whitworth, McMurray. We've already talked about that. Then in the other corner, it's River Falls and Edgewood at River Falls, Wheaton and Gustavus at River Falls, Claremont, Mudd, Scripps, and St. Thomas at Whitewater, and Whitewater will host Northwestern. Who do you see are maybe the 4 teams here that we'll be talking about next week?
Well, on the bottom, I think it's either Whitewater or Claremont. I know St. Thomas has played a little bit better lately, but I think they've just lost too much from last year, and they're not getting Hannon back. No. So they're going to struggle. I know that Tingwall and Wildeburg have come up big in games recently. I'm just not sure that's going to be enough. I like Claremont and St. Thomas like to play a similar defensive style. That would just be one of those interesting 57-55 games. So it's either them or Whitewater. We've seen Whitewater kind of underperform its seed in the NCAA tournament of late, but I think at home they'll probably win that. In the next pot up, I actually like Wheaton. River Falls is a tough place to play because it's loud, but I don't think Wheaton's going to get intimidated. Wheaton just played in about the loudest Division III facility I've been in decades on Saturday when they played at North Central. So I don't think playing at River Falls is going to bother them. Moving up, Whitworth or Mary Hardin Baylor. I guess I like Mary Hardin Baylor at home, but this is interesting because Mary Hardin Baylor didn't play a whole lot of teams outside their conference just in total, let alone big tests. So it should be interesting if they'll get their feet underneath them each of the previous night. And who knows? I mean, the McMurray football team left Division III with a bang. They won a road game in the NCAA tournament before leaving Division III for good. Maybe the men's basketball team can do that too.
By the way, I'm in the middle of texting with Robin Hamilton from the Women's Committee Chair, who is safely landed, which is good to hear. She will actually, Chris, be on the lookout, be calling. Yeah, I gave her the right number. And when we get her, we will adjust accordingly. So I apologize if I look distracted, but when the National Committee Chair is texting you, you check the text.
Sit up and pay attention.
Yep, exactly. Even if she doesn't realize it. Let's go into the lower left, if you don't mind. I think you covered it all there in the upper. So basically, you have your 4 teams coming out one more time. I'm sorry.
I think Virginia Wesleyan. Yeah. I guess Mary Hardin Baylor, Wheaton, Whitewater.
Okay, very interesting. Lower left-hand corner, just to keep it in a clockwise motion. Lots of good games here. Wash U will be hosting Buena Vista. North Central of Illinois and Rose-Hulman will be there as well. Transylvania is hosting Carroll, and Wittenberg, I should say, in Birmingham. Southern will be playing. That's a great game, I think, against 2 teams that I'm just not sure about. Worcester's hosting Maryville. Randolph-Macon and Capital will be there as well. Hope is hosting, as we expected, Westminster of Missouri. Stevens Point and Illinois Wesleyan will be there. What's your take on this corner?
Yeah, and just to clarify, in the projection, we actually had Hope playing Rose-Hulman, but we talked about Westminster being a possibility. I just didn't think it made sense to put Westminster in a bus an extra 6 hours to send them to Hope when they could have gone to Wash U more easily. But
could have walked.
No. They're about. Westminster's not in St. Louis, but Fontbonne could walk.
Yes, absolutely. they could throw their basketballs to the gym.
That Hope pod, it looks big. It looks like those are some big name teams in that pod. But you remember, Stevens Point is in a tailspin, and Illinois Wesleyan is out of the top 25, and they haven't necessarily played great of late. So if you were putting this pod together in 2005 or so, you would think, A, either this is bracket of death, or B, this is 3/4 of the Final Four. So, but I think Hope should win this. I think Hope certainly has no trouble the first night, just because nobody from the SLIAC has won an NCAA tournament game yet in men's basketball, and whoever wins Illinois Wesleyan Stevens Point, I think probably be maybe a little more. What's the word I'm looking for? They're going to have a real tough battle in the first round against each other.
Yeah.
And Hope might have a little bit of an advantage of being a little better rested. But I think Hope wins this pod fairly convincingly.
Hey, I'm actually going to jump off here, and no, you can stay. I'm going to jump off the topic.
So I will move up to the next pod.
Oh, go ahead. Well, I was just going to say Robin is on the line.
Well, let's bring her in. Then.
So
far more interesting than me talking.
Yeah, let's jump off the men's bracket here, and we're going to jump back into the women here. And joining us on the Hoopsville hotline is Robin Hamilton, Women's Basketball Committee Chair, and Puget Sound Associate Athletics Director. Robin, welcome to Hoopsville.
Thanks so much, and I'm not sure I'm that much more interesting than anybody that's speaking right now. But
well, it's Pat Coleman who's on the line with us.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that, Pat. Thank you.
Yeah, sure, no problem.
Robin Hamilton joining us. Glad you at least had a safe flight back to Seattle, so thank you for joining us and taking time. I know you don't have the bracket technically in front of you, and I also know you don't have any notes in front of you, so we'll try and be gentle. Obviously, 64 bracket team here for women's basketball, so no buys to talk about. I asked this to Ken to start off. I'll start off with you as well. How did you feel the process went over not only the last 24, 48, and 72 hours, but even the last few weeks?
Well, honestly, Dave, we have come a long way just in the 3 years that I have been on this committee in terms of the information that we're provided, and the systems are just getting better. We were able to utilize a great software system this year that really, really helped. Just helped facilitate, distance and mileage and making sure that, people weren't in the same conferences and that type of thing going forward. So, it was a intense process, and I'm going to tell you that we were very thorough because there were no quick conversations in the last 48 hours that we spent trying to put this all together.
A quick question about the software. I meant to ask Ken about that because I knew about it. Did the men use the same system, I assume?
I assume they did. I didn't really pick my head into the men's room to try to figure out what was going on. We were, checking to see who else was hosting and that type of thing, but I didn't really say. My head was spinning around a little bit, Dave. I'm not going to lie to you.
My first question is, was there any giddiness, and I say that yet purposely, when the men said they were going to give Amherst, and Pat did just drop the line, so he was on 2. We should be able to drop him and not lose you. Robin, we'll get him back on here. Was there any sense of giddiness, as it were, when the men said, listen, we're giving Amherst a bye? Had you planned this? Were you thinking, wow, we now have a chance of at least letting Amherst host?
Yeah, we always have a number of what-if situations.
Right.
Everything is all about trying to stay a step ahead and anticipating what might happen. And obviously, anytime you have a number one, a team that's been undefeated that is the defending national champion, and the opportunity to give them a host is certainly something, we would like to take advantage of. So, I think everybody was happy that it worked out the way it did. And, hats off to everybody working collaboratively together and getting that done.
Was that something that you guys found out early on, or was that somewhat in the process? How soon did you guys find out?
It was during the process, and but we spent some quality time on the phone on Sunday. So if you were to ask me when exactly it happened, I probably couldn't tell you. I know what time pizza was delivered, and that's all I can really recall.
Well, that's the important thing. We had pizza delivered right at the beginning of our show last night too. So
I get it, Dave.
Pat Coleman rejoins us here on Hoopsville. Pat, I'll let you have the floor here.
So I had a question, Robin, about the very first at-large team I saw when the bracket was revealed, and not because I disagreed, but it just had me wondering. The Pool B selection, St. Joseph, Brooklyn. What would happen if there was nobody with an above 500 record in Pool B? What would happen to that bid?
I think that's a great question. I can't tell you right now because I didn't. We anticipated and knew early on that we had a couple teams that were going to be close to 500 or above, and we sweated that more about a week and a half ago than we did going into the weekend. So, and to be quite honest, I don't know what happens when Brooklyn or St. Joseph's Brooklyn doesn't get that done. We had a couple other people that we did look at, and just like we vet out everything else, we vetted out the Pool Bs. Everybody that was a Pool B was on a screen, and we looked at all of them. So, it's an interesting and a very exciting time on their campus. I just spoke with the site reps for that region, and to say the least, they are a very excited group of people up there tonight.
I got a call from a beat writer covering Colby, and you can probably understand why they were calling. But the question, of course, was, why doesn't Colby get selected? And, to kind of turn that question or similar questions back to you for a second, look at Colby, who had an excellent strength of schedule, a decent, though obviously not super stellar, regional win-loss percentage, several results against regionally ranked opponents. And then Kings, for example, was 21-4. Strength of schedule was about 70 points lower. They played, to my reckoning, one regionally ranked opponent all year, and they were 0-1. How do you evaluate teams when your guys are looking at them when you have such disparate numbers, especially when you're talking about games against regionally ranked opponents?
Well, and I think that's the million-dollar question: is how do you take a regional ranking system and then put together a national championship? And again, strength of schedules are interesting and they're deceiving, and without the ability to drill down, and again, I made it very clear early on, I don't have any notes in front of me. As a matter of fact, I'm driving on beautiful I-5 in the Great Northwest. So what I can tell you is that without drilling down into those numbers, what were their wins against 600 or better teams? What were their when you talk about strength of schedule, and please remind me, I don't recall what Colby's overall win-loss record was off the top of my head.
19-7 in region.
Yeah. So again, not only do you need to have a strength of schedule, but at some point you need to win those games. So there's a lot of different things that go into it, and without having the numbers in front of me, I could tell you that Colby is probably among a number of institutions in the country today that are asking those same questions of us, and wishing and hoping for a different outcome.
You mentioned wins against teams with a plus 600 record. Is that something that you guys look at? Because that's not really in the criteria.
Yeah, we can if we just can't figure out how to determine strength of schedule. There's all kinds of different things we might look at. Eventually you might have to look down into whether or not teams have had bad losses, whether or not teams, when it washes out across the board, when somebody has the win-loss percentage and that one criteria and somebody else has the strength of schedule criteria, and so you're even all the way across the board, you have to dig down and try to figure out something that might separate the two institutions. And that's the rub, is trying to figure that out.
Talking to Robin Hamilton here, the Women's National Committee Chair for the Division III Women's Basketball Championship. One story that I know that caught some people's attention, we did talk to Coach Scheibel here earlier, was Rochester being left out of the NCAA tournament. Granted, losing 6 of their last 8, ending up 19-6 overall. Had been regionally ranked number 1 in the previous week. Let me ask you a twofold question. I don't want to get in. Obviously, I know you don't have details in front of you, but first off, I know when you and I talked back in late January, I should say, or early February, whenever the timing was, you had mentioned that you were going to allow the committees, each regional committee, do their work, not make any changes during the year. But then advise them as well. Listen, maybe you need to think of this, maybe you need to think of that. And then ultimately hold the right to say to them in the final rankings that aren't published but you used for the selections, we don't agree, we aren't sure. Was Rochester one of those teams where they were ranked late, pretty high, and then kind of fell off the board, as it were, that either A, you guys decided to make a change with, or that committee decided to make a change with because finally enough was enough?
Well, and again, please don't hold me to these numbers, because I hate to talk about specifics when I don't have facts in front of me. I think that's a little irresponsible. However, I believe that Rochester lost their last 3 games. Yep. Is that correct?
Yeah, they lost their last 3 in 6 of the 8.
Yeah, and so I'm guessing, and again, I don't recall. Just so you know, we did very little adjusting to rankings from our racks. I am so proud of the work that each of the racks did across the country. And again, it worked. And I'm pleased to say, by giving them the ability to vote independently without the National Committee, they certainly did an outstanding job and got that done. My guess is that Rochester's 3 straight losses would definitely move them from one week to the other, whether we were talking about the first week of the season ranking or the final week of rankings. That would certainly drop any team in the country significantly.
Certainly. can understand that. Granted, 2 of them came before one of the regional rankings, but obviously we have a shorter week as that third one slides in. This is a question I got on email. I kind of gave my opinion on it earlier, but I promised I would at least ask it. Did any of the issues with Kane being under investigation have any bearing on what happened with them in the bracket, hosting, not hosting, positioning, et cetera, et cetera?
No.
I didn't think so.
No.
I promised
No.
I would answer it.
Yeah, no, the subject never came up.
Okay. Pat?
Oh, I knew when that was abrupt that he was going to come back to me. I didn't have something. I did want to talk actually about the WIAC. I thought it was great that 4 teams got in first of all because those 4 were clearly head, shoulders, and probably torso above the rest of the conference, and they performed well in the non-conference schedule. So my question to you would be, in the past, I think we talked about, we've seen 4 NESCAC teams or 4 UAA teams. Is there ever a point where, people talk about when you've got another WIAC team on the board, you say you've got that 4th teamer from a particular conference, does anybody ever particularly say, perhaps we don't, perhaps we just don't need another team from this conference, or don't we have already enough teams from this conference and we reach a quota and don't want to put anybody else in?
I guess that's the blessing of being way up in the Great Northwest, is that I'm not that familiar with which ones are in the WIAC and which ones aren't. And I think that our committee, sometimes you wouldn't even know what school we're talking about. We're looking at Team A versus Team B and the numbers that play out to that. Where they're from and where they're associated, I am really happy to say that that doesn't come into play. And again, when we wheel all those out and try to compare all these different teams, again, it could be Team Blue and Team White and Team Yellow. There's not that much import put on what the name of that institution is and what part of the country they're from.
Curious, do you mean that you guys don't have the team name in front of you? Or are you actually hiding the team? Or are you just, okay. Sorry, the way you went there for a minute.
No, we have the team names in front of us, but once you start wheeling the things, it wouldn't matter. Again, the names just, after hours and hours of this, the name of the institution, it's really about the numbers.
Yeah, right.
I could tell you SOSs of certain teams, but not where they're associated with. You know what I mean? It becomes about the numbers, and very little importance play to who they are or where they're from.
Well, and let me.
I think that's a great thing, actually.
And the thing about Eau Claire getting in is it kind of proves to people that you don't have to be in the last regional ranking to get into the NCAA tournament. In fact, to be honest with you, if I look at it, I think there are at least 4 at-large teams from the Central region alone, which means that somebody who was ranked below the line, who couldn't get into a published regional ranking, got into the tournament. So my question is, how deep do the regional committees go for selection Sunday, selection Monday, in order to make sure that they have enough at-large candidates to be considered? How many teams would they typically rank?
Each of the regions got to determine that. Obviously, the Northeast had some additional ones that they needed to rank down to. The West actually increased the number that they needed to drill down to and rank out to. So each of the regions, we anywhere from 12 to 17.
Nice. I asked that, Robin, because I had a former committee member who swears to me up, down, and sideways that you can't get into the tournament as an at-large if you're below 6 in the Central, or if you're below 8 or 10 or whatever it is we're ranking these days in the Northeast. And I told him, I just don't think that's mathematically possible. And thank you, you guys proved it for me today.
Yeah, no, we do what we need to do. We'll rank out the entire region if we have to make sure that we get it right. Not that I want to, because trust me, I haven't slept for 2 days, so I have no interest in going that deep any longer.
Oh, that would have been fun. I say you just have regional rankings with every team regionally ranked. Why not? We just take the guesswork out of all this.
You're a funny guy, Dave. Really funny.
We're all about as punchy as you are. So.
Yeah,
exactly. I know. We're all on sort of the marathon run right now, aren't we?
Exactly. You won't want to know where my brain was at about 2 o'clock today, as I realized it was 2 o'clock at work. And some fascinating matchups. You guys obviously did a lot. I think last year it seemed like you were locked down a little bit more in where you could send teams and how creative you were. I kind of going over it tonight, seeing a lot of more creativity with this bracket, especially obviously you took advantage of the mileage as much as you could. Was that a mentality going in? Was it try and keep these pods and these regions as shook up and as diverse as possible?
I mean, that's always, we want to make it a fair and interesting tournament. And, you guys got on us pretty hard last year about the bracket of death. So, just so you know, we had that in our mind. No, we didn't.
Oh, come on.
I think
I got the soundbite for next year.
Yeah. I just want to make you feel good for a minute.
Yeah.
I just want to make you feel good.
Thank
but
you.
I really think that, I do think that the software actually assists us in that a lot. I was really pleased with it. And, we walked out across the board feeling really, really good about the bracket we put together, and we take great pride in trying to get it right, or as right as we can possibly be. And I think across the board, our committee felt really great about that.
Talking to Robin Hamilton here, the Women's Basketball Committee Chair, as she is driving to her home after being in Indianapolis the last few days. Pat Coleman on the Hoopsville hotline with us as well. Pat, do you have anything to follow up?
Uh-oh.
No, you don't have to.
Put
I
me
can.
on the spot a couple times.
I can easily jump and grab other questions I have. So,
go ahead.
Obviously, the Amherst situation, they could potentially host all the way through. You have other scenarios that certainly allow it. I know there was a question about Thomas More, for example. They're hosting. That seems that's a geographical reason because you can get Louisiana College there easily. Maryville and Illinois Wesleyan can come there as well. Is that the right sense, or were they regionally seated high enough to actually host?
And I don't remember the regional seats without them in front of me. I do know that we were really trying to work to, as you mentioned before, there's a number of that central middle of the country schools that are in this year, and we needed to fill that geographically. So I think that's part of it. And honestly, I can't remember where Thomas More was.
It's okay.
I could lie and make up some number, but I'm not going to.
Sure. No? Okay. And then other teams certainly rewarded for their seasons, obviously, like Mary Washington and such. Your sense overall, you said the software certainly helped, and that obviously helped your regional committees. You said you made very few changes this year?
From the regional rack?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
like I said, I was ecstatic, and I think we all were, with the work that the racks did. I think because we gave them that opportunity to own that, as it were, they just grabbed it and really delivered. So really the hat's off to them to getting it right and working really hard at it. So we're very fortunate to have so many great people, coaches and administrators throughout the country that know the value of putting in the time and effort and getting this stuff right.
I was talking to a women's coach the other day who talked about these regional rankings and how they're done, and he knows that, he's been on the committee. He knows what the primary and secondary criteria are. He doesn't have any frustrations there. But he gathered that, and I sensed it a little bit sometimes too, especially with Rochester being number one in the last published regional ranking. Is there anything that you as a national committee can do or do to say to each regional committee, yes, you have your own region, but please, we would like everyone to kind of also have the same basis of operation, in the sense of, while strength of schedule and regionally ranked results and et cetera are primary criteria, we all want you at least to have the same mentality on how you weigh those, whether you want to tell us how they're weighed or not. It didn't seem like every committee had that same mentality this year.
I think we worked really hard with that. And like I said, I spent numbers of hours countless hours with our committee and going over that and refining that and reinforcing that we all wanted to look at those numbers the same way. And again, human beings have free will on occasion. And I think that, they all fight themselves a little bit, what their instinct is and what we have deemed to be the way the committee is going to look at it. And I really think the good news is I really think by the last week we were all on the same page on how we were going to interpret those numbers. So it took a while, and I'm not going to lie to you. I don't know that we were all on the same page week 1 or even maybe week 2, but we just kept pounding at it, and our committee had a few knockdown dragouts on the phone about how to get it and what we thought was right. And because they're great people and want to work hard to do it, I think we finally delivered.
Couple quick thoughts. First one would be on that token. Where it was more heavily favored? Was strength of schedule? Was it regionally ranked opponents? Results against? Was it the actual regional schedule? The results at that particular team? Was there anywhere that one had one kind of laid over the other?
No, and as a matter of fact, when we got to the national poll, we looked at all games in division, not just regional games, because we had a lot of crossover in the country of head-to-heads that people were able to match up with each other, and so we did take a look at some of those numbers as well. But no, I can't point to one over the other. I think we consistently looked at the categories just like the regional committees do every week. But again, we need to go to secondary on that because there's a lot of in-division. Example is Lewis and Clark out in the West here in the Northwest Conference played both Keene and Oneonta in preseason. And so we actually had a chance to compare across the country. And so those things, you have to look at because they are in Division 3 games. So we can take a little bit of look at that. But a lot of it comes right off the regional rankings, too. So it's just a combination.
Hey, Robin, at what point in the process do you guys jump to the secondary criteria like that?
It just depends on if we wash out in some other criteria, then we look at everything. On Selection Sunday, we look at everything. We look at, like I said, what color their uniforms are, what their mascot might be. Just kidding. We don't go that deep. But
that was creative, though.
If you figured out what blue gold was for Eau Claire, I'd be happy to hear.
If I figured out which was?
For Eau Claire, the blue gold.
I can't. I'm sorry. That one we can't do. So, like I said, you guys asked us to be more creative with the bracket, so we did.
Hey, obviously there's some listeners who are asking why particular things like no Buffalo State, no Rochester or St. Lawrence, but Hartwick gets in. I know you don't have numbers in front of you, so I don't know if you can fairly answer that, so I'm not going to put you on the spot with those. But I would love to ask you this one. Louisiana College, number one regionally ranked, loses in the conference championship. I know they're a lock probably to get in, so I'm not going down that road, but it was late in the afternoon on Sunday, and I know there's a lot of what-ifs and what if this happens and what if this happens, and I realize that some conference championships may be unavoidable on Sunday, but they seem to be getting later and later, especially on the men's side. Is there any thought of going to these conferences and saying, here's the deal, you're putting your selections in jeopardy because you're giving us less time to react, or, you know what, enough's enough, you got to have them in by X time?
Yeah, and obviously that's certainly not my role or my position here. But I can tell you that it did add some significant work to committee members. Were doing up to 5 or 6 different what-ifs. And this is the regional committees that had to wait for those or were anticipating those. So you go in and you put X team beats this team loses to this team, and you have to do every one of those scenarios in order to be prepared for that. And then we would sit and wait for those games to complete and then go, hey, we're going with scenario 5 in the South and have to pick it up. So, again, I know it does create a lot of work, and I know that the latest one for the women this year was at 2:30 start, right?
Yeah, I think so.
So that was the latest that it's been since I've been around. So, it certainly pushes the process a little later into the evening than a lot of us would like to have it. But again, that's not my role or my.
Well, I know
position,
it's not your
so-
role, but certainly as a committee chair, you can go, listen, we need to talk about this.
Yeah, the older I get, the more I'd like us to play all of our games at 11 a.m. So I don't know if that means anything.
No comment.
Past my bedtime at some point.
As a production guy, I don't want to get there at 8 in the morning to set up for an 11 o'clock game, just for the record.
Yeah. So we live in a different world.
Yeah. But I don't need to be there at 8 o'clock at night either sometimes, so don't worry.
Yeah.
Wrapping it up here with Robin Hamilton, who's heading home, and we don't want to take too much more of her time, but we certainly appreciate her doing that nonetheless. There's some questions about Rhode Island College, and oh, never mind. I'm not going to even try and dive into it. Obviously, they're hosting. Down the road, obviously, we could be in scenarios where, not the top team is hosting because of geography. How far down the road did you look as a committee, or were you asked to look by the NCAA to consider flights, to consider other hosting scenarios? Was it suggested? Was it pushed to look that far down the road and almost plan it out?
I think that we were cognizant of it. I don't think that it was, something that we were, sitting there worrying about the whole time. I think that, we want to make it right. These are still student athletes, so we want to be able to get them where they need to be. And but again, it's always a conscious part of the Division III policies, and we're okay with that. We work within those constraints. But it wasn't. It wasn't a big deal.
Okay.
We certainly paid attention to it, but not overridingly.
Okay, but and I meant to ask this in the men's committee. Was your bracket ever returned to you by the NCAA and go, nope, we have two problems?
No, because we're that good, Dave.
Oh.
It's a joke. It's late in the evening. I'm just
I
kidding.
have
you guys
got
over there.
quotes for next year's show open up. Thank you, Miss Hamilton. No, I'm kidding.
Then you could also put a smiley face next to it.
Well, I've got a nice smiling picture of you off the athletics website at Puget Sound,
great.
so it's all good.
I appreciate it.
Well, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for letting me come on. And again, congratulations to all the teams in the tournament, and best of luck to all those student athletes and all their fans to just have a great time with the tournament, enjoy it. A lot of people are putting in some hard work as hosts and site reps and everything else, and the officials and everybody else. So it's a great time of the year, and I'm just proud to be part of it, and I appreciate all you guys' support as well.
Well, thank you. That sounds like a really good final word, but I do have a special parting gift for you. Pat Coleman has said on the show that it looks like his plan will be to be in Holland, Michigan for the women's Final Four this year. We are trying to save 2 flights in the eyes of the NCAA, and he will not necessarily fly to Holland where he would have flown to Salem. So you may get a chance to meet Pat Coleman in person in Holland. I don't know. Maybe that's not a parting gift. I'm not sure, but that's my parting gift.
I think it's fantastic. I look forward to meeting Pat and talking a little bit of Division III women's basketball with him.
There you go. Well, Robin, thank you so much for joining us. I know you've been having a long day, so I'll let you go. Enjoy a good night's sleep, as it were. Good work. Thank you very much, and we'll talk soon.
Thanks, guys. Thanks again.
All right,
Bye-bye.
Take care. Robin Hamilton joining us on the Hoopsville Hotline. We're going to take a very quick break. Pat Coleman will join us once again. Voice seems to have come back a little bit, but we'll see. We'll try and answer some of your last bit of questions, and et cetera, et cetera. By the way, I'm not sure if we'll really break into who's going to do well on the women's side of things, because we may be able to do that on Thursday since there are no games being played on Thursday. We also are running out of time on the show. We don't want to keep Chris here any later, and Pat and I would certainly like to go to bed. So we're going to at least tackle the rest of the men's bracket, maybe answer a few of your questions as well. You are listening to Hoopsville, presented by D3Hoops.com right here on Ustream. We'll be back after this.
Are you an embarrassment on the dance floor? Do you confuse state capitals and read too many celebrity gossip magazines? Well, if you answered yes, you may have what it takes to adopt a teen from foster care, because teens don't need perfection, they need you. So if you think an MP3 is a computer virus, it's okay. There are thousands of teens in foster care who would love to put up with you. For more information, call 1-888-200-4005 or go to adoptuskids.org. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt Us Kids, and the Ad Council.
So, EJ, we've designed you a signature shoe worthy of a 3-time All-American with mad smarts and sick leadership skills. Ta-da!
There are over 380,000 NCAA student athletes.
Yeah, you got your GPA and boss, right?
I love it. And just about all of them will be going pro in something other than sports.
Can I get it in a loafer for casual Fridays? Yes. Yes.
Who are you?
What are your team colors?
Who can make you cheer?
Who can bring your family and friends together?
And play your fight song?
Who can bring you to your feet?
Or bring you to your knees?
When the game is on the line, who do you want to take the last shot?
And who do you want to slap high fives, jump up and down, and yell at the top of your lungs with?
There's probably a game near you today. NCAA basketball. Who's your team?
We've got more schools than Division I, more fans than Division II, and more upsets than March Madness. There's 800 programs with over 11,000 games leading to 2 national championships. And we've been covering it all for over a decade. From Eastern to Occidental, from Puget Sound to Piedmont, from Southwestern to the University of New England, and from Hope to Calvin. Nobody covers Division III basketball like we do. We're at D3Hoops.com at www.d3hoops.com.
And welcome back to Hoopsville. I'm your host, Dave McHugh. Welcome back, everybody. It's been a busy few days and weeks for everybody involved, so we aren't going to be able to stay up too much longer, but we hope you, if you do have any questions, to please feel free to message us on the if you're on our Ustream feed, the actual raw Ustream feed, there should be a chat room. Feel free to use the chat room there. If not, email is available, Hoopsville at d3hoops.com. That's Hoopsville at d3hoops.com. You can IM us at Hoopsville2000. Yes, we still use that ancient technology of AOL IM. You can also join us on Facebook at facebook.com/Hoopsville and on Twitter at D3Hoopsville or hashtag Hoopsville. And rejoining me on the Hoopsville hotline is Pat Coleman of D3 Hoops. Pat, welcome back.
Hey, I know you.
I know you too. I think we know each other fairly. I think the wives would argue as to how much we actually know each other at this point in time in the seasons.
So I got an email.
Yeah, I've got a couple too, so go for it.
Wow, Hoopsville, way to buzzkill a team's morale. Did you get something like that?
No.
This is about NYU versus Amherst. I mentioned the segment right before that thinking that. So part of the reason why I think people think that Amherst is on a roll is because they are. Since the turn of the calendar, since January 1st, Amherst is 15-1, NYU is 13-5, which is probably why we kind of take a what have you done for me lately, and that's why NYU is playing in an 8-9 game, and Amherst is a number 1.
Yeah, and here's the thing with NYU, and it dates back to the Buena Vista days of yesteryears.
I'm just glad you pronounce it. So
I have to think about it because there's even a town in this area that does it the other way around. Not that there's either a right or wrong because it depends on where you are. Prove something in the tournament. NYU hasn't been there in how long?
I can't remember if it's 98 or 89, but either way.
So it's been a while since NYU has even earned their way in, and they technically didn't win their way in. They had to earn it with their strength of schedule and their records, et cetera, et cetera. Their regional, their out of conference was maybe a little bit more improved this year than it has been in past, but we've seen them have out of conference stellar years and then fall apart in the UAA. So my argument would be, prove yourself.
You want to play that Thursday game.
There you go. You are playing that Thursday game.
That you can get it done in the NCAA tournament.
And so you are playing Misericordia, which is going to be a tough squad just because they're full of excitement, having won their conference and playing in the NCAA tournament. You win that Thursday game, your reward is Amherst on Saturday.
And it's an appropriate reward.
I think it is.
Let's be honest with you.
And
NYU
prove
is
it.
20-5. NYU is 20-5, and that's great. They're in a strong conference, but they didn't win the conference. And they didn't. What did they do? They went 9-5 in conference. So it's not like it's not like they ran through that schedule.
Well,
so if they had done just a little bit better, if they'd won one more game we wouldn't be talking about them needing help to get in. If they had beaten Carnegie Mellon at home, for example, I think that's a good example. I think of a game they really should have had. Some of the other losses you could accept, but not losing.
They
at
won
home.
some big games on the road, and then they couldn't, do the job at home. Maybe it's a good thing that they're on the road for Amherst if they win, but they haven't proven they can win a lot at home in the conference.
And here's one more good thing too. Remember that NYU is going to come in with its tournament feet wet. And Amherst, while obviously they've had plenty of NCAA tournament experience in past years, is going to be sitting at home waiting for someone to come to them. And sometimes those teams don't do very well on Saturday night.
No, this is a good point. I mean, Amherst could be ripe for the taking. And NYU, I would love to see nothing better than to see you guys go in there and beat Amherst, because that makes a great story. It shows you guys belonged. There's a lot of reasons why that would be a great win. But as we've said, prove yourself. And if you prove yourself, then we know you're worthy. And I think a lot of people thought NYU was on the outside looking in. You're in the tournament. Congratulations. I'm happy for you. But let's now go prove it. And,
go get her done.
And go get her. Yeah, go get her done, as it were. Here's an email that I'm not following. Maybe you can. How did St. Mary's of Maryland and Keystone not flip-flop in the upcoming Mid-Atlantic Regional Final poll, which we did not see? They flip-flopped in February in St. Mary's, with St. Mary's losing in semis and Keystone losing at Cabrini in the finals in a well-contested game, would be enough to flip them back.
Okay, so here's one thing right away that I understand out of that. You got to remember that losing in the semis is not a criterion, right?
No.
It's not part of the NCAA criteria as to when you lose in your conference tournament. Where it affects you is, obviously you have one less win, and that doesn't help your record. But they never say, well, this team lost in the semifinals. That's a Division I thing. We don't do that here. So you got to.
The only time that's come up is
when
a team very questionable has gotten in and had lost very early. That's about the only time we talk about it.
Right, in retrospect, yeah.
In retrospect, correct.
Yeah,
right, yeah.
Not on selection,
No.
not at the selection point. You remember St. Mary's has a 50-point higher strength of schedule.
Mhm.
They have a win against a regionally ranked team, whereas Keystone is 0-3. Those are the reasons why it didn't flop back in the other direction.
Yeah, and the other thing quickly is, Keystone in the same conference as Cabrini, as pointed out there. Cabrini's strength of schedule is pretty low. If they had taken one more, maybe even two more losses, Cabrini's at-large bids were very much in danger, despite only having a handful of losses.
We would have been talking about them the way we talked about Birmingham Southern yesterday.
Absolutely, because the strength of schedule is so weak. Cabrini was fighting that. Remember, St. Mary's had results against Franklin and Marshall, which helped their regional record, not only their results versus regional record, but it helped their strength of schedule. They play in the Capital Athletic Conference, which had Mary Washington, who had a lot of good teams, and that resulted in their opponent winning percentage being high. So that helped their strength of schedule. Keystone was dying. Pat, yeah, go ahead and you start that one. I like that one. The CCIW tourney this past weekend, you and Dave have seen many more teams than most of us, to our chagrin, baby. Could you guys give some thoughts on any of the three teams who got in from the CCIW making a run? Pat, you go ahead and start with that.
I think that Wheaton might be in the best position to do so. They have their first round opponent against Gustavus Adolphus. That's going to be a pretty good matchup for them. I think it'll be pretty evenly matched. There's certainly two teams who aren't going to back down from each other and coached by people who have understand what the NCAA tournament is about. North Central is in position, obviously, to win a first-round game. I think they should be able to. They would be favored to beat Rose-Hulman anyway. That's for sure. We've certainly seen teams from the HCAC surprise in the first round, but I like North Central's chances there. The thing that's interesting to me, of course, is that North Central hasn't been in the tournament in NYU type numbers. So while North Central played really well at home, and in fairness, they played well everywhere else in the CCIW this year too. It was only Wheaton that tripped them up, and they did it twice in the regular season. But I think it's going to be a new experience for them. They're going to go down to a place where if the WashU fans come out, if they're not on spring break, for example, that place is going to be rocking. It's going to be loud, and it's not going to be positive for them. But North Central can beat WashU. I think WashU is when I was placing my bracket together, I thought Wash U was, where are my notes here? One of the bottom top seeds, number 6 among top seeds, with a Staten Island and Oswego State behind them. So they're, I think Wash U is takeable. There's a reason why they're ranked, I think 19th this week is what we got them up to in this week's poll. So that's a game that North Central could win. But I think, I'm not sure any of them make a really deep run. But I think those two teams are in good position. We talked about Illinois Wesleyan a little bit earlier. They could certainly beat Stevens Point. And I would be surprised to see them win at Hope.
Yeah, I can't really go beyond much of that. I think North Central has certainly shown they can play pretty good basketball inside the CCIW. How they play.
Well, let me tell you, Dave. I'm sorry to interrupt, but that gym is unbelievable.
Yeah, you texted me.
82 years old. Just an airplane hangar, loud. The floor is ancient. The sight lines are crazy. I'm not surprised that North Central does well there, to be honest with you. And it was, I was talking to Kevin Gillespie. We had the interview on the site earlier over the course of the weekend. He's the guard who scored 22, I think, tied a career high for North Central on Saturday night in the title game. And he said it had never been like that. Loud and packed in his 4 years there, and they really came out for that game. So, they're not going to be able to bottle that up and take it on the road with them. But it certainly helped propel them, I think, to get into the position that they're in now.
And by the way, really quickly, Wheaton, I think that's the other one. Illinois Wesleyan, I think they may be able to beat Stevens Point, who's banged up certainly. But I don't think anybody gets past Hope. I agree with you there. And then Wheaton,
and I actually picked Wheaton to come out of that pod when we talked earlier, but it's going to be a good battle.
I'm trying to find him again.
To be honest with you, Edgewood could beat River Falls in the first round too.
Yeah, and who knows with the Gustavus? I mean, we saw them play in Vegas, and I was certainly impressed. I thought they were a very good team. Not enough for me to put them in the top 25, even though I debated. I think maybe I did at one point this season. I don't know. They're a good squad who can certainly get the job done. So you never know what might happen with the Gusties. I got another tweet about the NCAC, where the chances two teams get into the Sweet 16. They followed that up as saying that I think that would validate the conference's strength this season. NCAC, it's got Worcester hosting. They play Maryville, and then they would either play Randolph-Macon or Capital. And then Wittenberg's on the road at Transylvania. Let's say Transylvania wins. They got to get past Birmingham Southern, by the way. And then most likely they would play Transylvania unless Carroll pulls off a heck of an upset. Let me give my take real quick. I said it earlier. I'm a little nervous about Wittenberg and Worcester. Wittenberg losing to Denison, and I went and took the time to really look at how I had them in my top 25 poll, and I just saw things I didn't like. They aren't playing as great as I remember them playing this season, and I'm a little nervous they're not as good as I expected them to be. I almost think they may have peaked. Worcester, same deal. Can't seem to put 40 minutes together, in my opinion. They also struggle against Denison. And I haven't seen anything out of Worcester that makes me go, wow, they're going to be a tough team. I don't know if they can both get out into the Sweet 16. Worcester has the best chance because I don't know if Randolph-Macon or Capital can take them out. Wittenberg's in a battle. If Birmingham Southern is as good as they may be, who knows? But then they're in a battle with Transylvania. I don't know if both of them can come out.
So what we have in the NCAC this year, I think, is a little bit more parity. We have, instead of having either Worcester or Wittenberg, or maybe both of them be top 10 candidates, we've got two teams in the teens, kind of in the second or third tier nationally in Division III, and then a third team who's pretty good, and Denison, who made a nice run, and DePauw, who helps the middle of that conference beef up after they came in from the SCAC. I got an email from someone during the course of the show who said, and I'm really paraphrasing this, but said basically that there's no way that the NCAC should get three teams in and the OAC should get only one. And I kind of went back through the numbers this year, and I let that person know. He said, to be honest with you, the NCAC and the OAC were pretty well evenly matched this year. It's hard to go and say that the OAC was better. You'd be talking about a 2008 or 2009 mentality. I don't think that was the case this year. I only did a quick spot check. I didn't do a completely cross check every result, but it looked like they split about 10 games this year, 5-5, pretty evenly down the middle between those two conferences. So I don't think that I think the NCAC.
I think they
was
were
the best conference. They were the best conference in the region this year.
Yeah, depth-wise, certainly. I just don't know if that meant the top was really the top and the best, or
No,
if that
I agree.
if it just meant that there was such a deep conference this year that it made it exciting, and the top teams are certainly good. I just don't know if they're the top teams necessarily, and I think Hope's proven that as well. By the way, whenever I say a conference is the best conference, I never mean it's because their top teams are the best in the country. I mean it's a deep conference.
Yeah, and I think you really have to measure the strength of a conference from top to bottom. Because it's those. First of all, to be honest with you, those bottom teams, if they do well out of conference, they boost everybody's strength of schedule in the conference. Because if you come in, say you play, say you're a 10-team conference, say you're an 8-team conference, you play 14 conference games and 11 out-of-conference games, and you play 9 of those 11 in region. If you come in 7-2 and then go 3-11 in conference, well, you're still 10-15 if I did the math correctly in my head, rather than being 6-19. That boosts everybody. You can, and that's the reason why, for example, the CCIW has been strong so many years. This year they have 2 teams who are really poor at the bottom of the conference, but often, the CCIW is winning, non-conference games at a pretty impressive clip and raising everybody's numbers in the process.
And by the way, another example would be Franklin Marshall's a very good team, but I would never say the Centennial's a top conference.
Right.
So there's an example. I'm trying to see if there's any other questions quickly. Did you see any? I think I did in the email, so if you hold on a quick
No, I don't have anything new. I know we haven't talked about our top left bracket a little bit.
Yeah, we haven't. I was going to get to that. I just want to make sure there wasn't something else.
Your webmail user.
Nope. That's all I got.
Viagra. No, I got nothing.
Yeah, there's a question. No, never mind. Let's get to the upper left then. Let's start in the upper left-hand corner. Hosted by Cabrini, Castleton State goes there. Hobart and Ohio Wesleyan. I find that a nice little mix there. Oswego State is... I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
that's a nice... you talk.
Barely. Oswego State is hosting Endicott, and Eastern Connecticut and Medaille are there as well. Middlebury is hosting Morrisville State, and we mentioned earlier Albertus Magnus and St. Joseph's of Long Island are there as well. William Patterson is hosting. Becker and Messiah and Scranton are there as well. Your take?
I think a lot of the... in fact, to be honest with you, I'm not sure any of the host schools are going to have any trouble in the first round. I think Becker's not as good as they have been in the past. I think, the strong Becker team from a couple years ago, the one that beat Scranton, if I remember correctly, at Williams, they would probably give William Patterson a bit of a run, and I'm not sure this Becker team can necessarily do it. And then on the flip side, Hobart, Ohio Wesleyan in those neutral games, that's going to be a good game. Albertus Magnus and St. Joe's is going to be a good game. Messiah and Scranton is going to be a good game. Eastern Connecticut obviously is far better tested than Medaille is. I mean, Medaille was 26-2 and couldn't get into the regional rankings because their strength of schedule was Chapman 2009-esque. So there was I went there. So there's I think Eastern Connecticut should win that game. And to be honest with you, Eastern Connecticut against Oswego in the championship of that little pod is going to be a real interesting matchup. And I might actually go with Eastern Connecticut there. I think Cabrini in the top, although, if it's Hobart against Cabrini, that's a really interesting... Really interesting thing to consider, isn't it?
The only thing I could take from that matchup is having somebody who's seen them. And
right.
Jim Wagner would be that person. He thinks extremely highly of Cabrini, thinks they're better than Franklin and Marshall. Franklin and Marshall... We have to
think highly of Mike Neer, though, right?
Well, hold on. I'm getting there. Franklin and Marshall beat Hobart, so in that sense, Cabrini may be favored. But you're right. Coach Neer has done a tremendous job with his Hobart squad in his first year, pretty much taking over the squad mid-October. And so I think he told us he met with his coaching staff on the 13th for the first time. So yeah, I don't want to lean away from Hobart either. That's got intrigue on it. Certainly, I think our good friend Gordon Mann will probably be there, so I'm jealous. But yeah, I mean that whole pod's got some interesting possibilities.
Yeah, I agree. The next one, Middlebury handles Morrisville State. Albertus and St. Joe's. You mentioned earlier this is going to be a kind of a track meet and athletic competition.
An athletic, yeah.
And I think you're probably right. This would be interesting to see how that plays out. I mean, I favor Albertus Magnus, but you
just don't know.
Yeah,
you just don't know. It's really going to be who's going to be able to stop the other one, and it sounds corny. But, I mean, Albertus Magnus just rolled over the GNAC in the last couple of games. Granted, they didn't face off against the top team, or they are the top team. I mean, the next top team. But at the same time, can they shut down? And I think that's the question I've had all year. Can they shut a team down? And they're going to have to do it.
Can you contain Ray Askew and make everybody else beat you? And I'm not sure that's the case.
And that's going to be the tough one, for sure.
Especially in a track meet. So Messiah, Scranton, I mean, I have not been blown away by how William Patterson has played this year. I just don't know if Messiah and Scranton necessarily challenge them either.
I've seen Scranton quite a bit, caught Messiah on video. I think William Patterson's advantage may be inside. Scranton's not as physical and skilled out on the inside as well, they never really are. Pat, you still there?
I'm here.
Okay, sorry, thought I heard the line drop. I agree with you. I think if William Patterson lays an egg or just doesn't show up, then there's a chance here. But I don't have any gut that tells me William Patterson doesn't walk out of this one. It's also on their home floor, and they know they aren't playing there next weekend if the women win. So, they want to make their best in front of the home crowd.
I think whoever comes out of that pod is going to be the big underdog at the sectionals next weekend.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely agree with you. Which, by the way, could be a fascinating. Where are they going to put those sectionals?
So Cabrini, William Patterson, who couldn't host. Let's say it was Eastern Connecticut or Oswego. I don't think the geography matters too much. Middlebury. I mean, I think is almost everybody has to be within 500 miles of Middlebury in this bracket. So
they might just send them all up.
Other than Ohio Wesleyan, I guess. But Ohio Wesleyan would cause travel issues for a lot of schools, I think.
Yeah. Well, now, granted, Cabrini's technically the one in the region.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we would have to... I mean, obviously, the NCAA doesn't give us seedings either.
No.
God forbid we do that. But that's the conclusion we draw from how this bracket's laid out.
Yeah, there would be Cabrini's to host. That being said, do they have the facilities to host?
Well, I mean, if Ohio Wesleyan advances, obviously, then...
Oh, that changes everything.
Yeah,
that changes everything. All right, very good. I don't see any other questions. I think we got it all covered.
And then we'll talk about the women's stuff on Thursday.
Yeah, we'll cover women's stuff on Thursday. There's no point in doing it tonight since they play everything, and we'll get a few guests on as well. I know Dave Martin will be joining us from Misericordia. I greeted him on the phone, as I did last night, as saying the only national committee chair on the men's side that I've ever known is now coaching the next year in the women's NCAA tournament.
Yeah, I mean, the only other close to comparable thing I can think of is, you remember when John Zeke came out of coaching retirement to finish off Piedmont a couple years ago.
Right.
Finish them off.
I know what you meant. You're punchy. I was going to let it slide.
He took them. He made them pretty good, actually.
He did. And their coach, I think their coach there is doing a tremendous job. And obviously he's assistant coach. That was a great interview earlier this year, talking about the fact that she actually puts her boss in place when it comes to basketball, which is always great to hear. So yeah, we'll break down the women on Thursday, and we'll have some interviews as well, get some reaction from coaches who are playing the NCAA tournament. But Pat, final thought here as we've seen the men's and women's before we let you go.
I think we've actually got two pretty good brackets. Usually we like one bracket better than the other, but I can't really say I have a preference for either of these brackets. I think they both did a pretty good job, a pretty comparable job, and we'll have to see how this plays out because it could be some pretty exciting basketball in both of these brackets, and I look forward to it.
I think the women did a better job maybe of getting rid of regional opponents in the first round. I think the men got stuck on a few that they could have easily changed. I'm not sure Ken did a great job trying to answer that either. That would be my only knock on the men's side, to be honest.
My biggest complaint is the one thing I pressed him on was that I thought Whitworth deserved a first-round bye, and I laid out a way it could be done, and
it was a surprise.
So there it was. They just either didn't see it or actively chose not to do that. And Whitworth was going to be seeded enough to deserve a home game, and I think they should have gotten it. That's my biggest. If that's my one biggest concern, we don't have a bracket of death. We don't have East versus East and West versus West in the national semifinals and all those other things that the disasters that the men's basketball committee has foisted on us in the last 6 to 8 years. So
take a thought from the Bravo show Top Chef. They're good enough that the point that if we were to have to pick which one was better, we were literally nitpicking to do it.
Exactly.
Yeah. So.
All right, now I'm going to pack my knives and go.
Pack your knives and go, Pat. Very good. I am not Padma, though.
Thanks.
No. Pat Coleman, thank you for joining us as always. We're going to wrap up the show. Just a couple quick thoughts, if my voice can hold. Is for starters, I think they did a good job. Yes, I have some qualms with the men's a little bit. Again, it'd be nitpicking. I know there's some problems that other people have. Teams get left out. We always hear complaints. I know there's a lot of you wondering why Buffalo State and Rochester and St. Lawrence were left out. I think Rochester may have answered that for themselves. Losing 6 of the last 8 games certainly did not help them, and probably had enough of that. Why did St. Lawrence get left out? I don't know. Why is Hartwick in? It wasn't. I thought Hartwick was ranked ahead of St. Lawrence in the last regional rankings. I don't know. Here's the only thing I'm going to say. These final regional rankings have to come out. Plain and simple. Now, we will go back and check, but I'm quite sure on this Hoopsville show, we were told the men's would be released. I know on this Hoopsville show, the women said they would not be released. We will go back and check those audios and double check and make sure we got that information correct. Nonetheless, these regional rankings, as the men did last year, have to be released. And I say they have to be released because we should deserve to know the answers. Hiding what the regional rankings were from us at the end when you release a bracket with no more information than this is not fair to anybody. I think we, and I say we as a Division III community, deserve to have a few more answers. If we see that Rochester fell to 5th in the region, let's say, or 6th, or not even on the regional rankings, we can probably deduce why they didn't make the NCAA tournament. You can probably deduce why St. Lawrence didn't make the NCAA tournament. You can probably deduce why Buffalo State. We also get the final SOS numbers, so a lot of that we can figure out ourselves. We at least get to see what the data was. Robin Hamilton talked about the great software that they use that it made the bracket better, and I applaud them for using the software. It certainly looked good. But there's nothing wrong with letting us see the final data. There's nothing wrong with letting us see the final regional rankings. Do you release the super regional rankings, which they had to obviously get an Eau Claire-type team into the regional rankings? No. Keep it to the basic regional rankings. We can deduce from there. But that being said, let us see the regional rankings. It will leave less questions, and it will let us know that you care, NCAA, about how this whole process is treated. You've already cut the regional rankings down to 3. It's far too few. Teams deserve to know where they stand. Fans deserve to know where their teams stand. And coaches deserve to know beforehand. Maybe 4, maybe 5. Now, I will admit a flaw in that ointment, or in that plan, is the simple fact that more regional rankings with a once-ranked, always-ranked approach may get teams with too many results versus regionally ranked opponents. I will admit that could be a flaw. But 3 regional rankings is not enough to let people understand how this process is. And not releasing the final regional rankings, when the pre-championship handbook, by the way, states on the men's side that they will, doesn't work either. And finally, the fact that the men and women actually do things differently frustrates me. I know it's two different games. I know we're dealing with two different sets of numbers in the amount of teams who get in the tournament, the bracket, the size, and the amount of teams you're dealing with, period. But the fact that the men have a weighted scale for home and away games, which I agree with, and the women don't, makes no sense. And by the way, it's been like that since day one and when the weighted came out. The fact that the strength of schedules and criteria, primary and secondary and all that, is maybe weighted differently by different committees, within reason, I don't understand that. And the fact that these brackets are sometimes put together with different mentalities, I don't get. I know it's a human thing. But on the men's side, the fact that Franklin and Marshall and York, Rhode Island College and Salem State, just two examples of about 6 or 8 on here, of regional teams playing each other when they could be flipped with another team in the same pod to give diversity to the bracket, is a mistake I struggle with. I thought we were headed in the right direction. It looks like we might have taken a step back with transparency and maybe with a little bit of bracketing. Again, I'm nitpicking. I am nitpicking. But I would like to see the final regional rankings, and I would like to see some consistency. I know we change regional committee chairs. I know committee members change. But that doesn't mean you can't stay consistent. And consistency and transparency are my key words when it comes to our brackets. Good job, though, to both committees. They worked hard. Thought they did a very good job with these brackets. The women's is very nicely done. I thought the men's is very creative. I think we've got some great games ahead of us this coming weekend. I think we may have one of the more exciting first weekends we've had in a long time. Who's dancing for the Sweet 16 is a tough question to answer. Thank you for letting me spout off and rant there for a little bit. Don't know if I made any sense. I'm glad my voice survived. We'll be back Thursday night from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Time with a few guests of who are in the NCAA tournament. And we'll look ahead on the women's side of who may be dancing after the weekend. Don't forget, Sunday we'll be back on the air 7 to 9 o'clock as we break down what happened on the first weekend. And so on and so forth all the way up to Holland and Salem. Chris Tarr did his yeoman's work. We will get him a good school of the week next week. And in the meantime, thank you for listening to Hoopsville. 2 big shows, and we appreciate you joining us. You've been listening to Hoopsville, presented by D3Hoops.com on Ustream. We'll see you Thursday night.